Welcome to this week's episode of Campbell and Jones Meet the Monsters, the podcast where we chart the cinematic legacy of the classic monsters. I'm John Campbell. With me, as always, Brendan Jones.
Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum.
The rest of the podcast is just going to be an hour of that.
Weirdly, that has been in my head
Yeah.
for days now, because I did watch this twice in preparation for this podcast.
I only watched it the once, but it's also in my head too.
Yes, everything in this movie that we're about to. And by the way, hello, John,
Yes.
and hello, listeners.
Yes.
Sorry, but everything in this movie kind of clicks, and it's a perfect story. I'm not saying this is a masterpiece, but as far as TV movies of the 1970s,
I think it is a masterpiece of its type.
Yeah, absolutely. And
This
and
is
it's
as good
weird
a TV
where
movie as you're ever going to see.
exactly, and the whole the feel of it, and it is, when I say a perfect storm, it's something that really wasn't by committee. It is all the right pieces coming into play.
Yes.
And that's why we're excited to be talking about The Night Stalker.
Yeah. 1972's The Night Stalker. We say cinematic legacy, but this is a television legacy. This is a television movie, which is so interesting. And we both watched the new special edition, the Blu-ray.
Kino Lorber.
I love
Kino Lorber.
I have a lot of Kino Lorber discs because they do a great job of not only restoring movies but having cool special features as well. But on there's an archive interview with Dan Curtis, which I loved because Dan Curtis is the most old-timey TV producer.
He is, but you know who he reminded me of watching that thing? In his attitudes to everything and his general his aura was Donald Trump. And I don't mean that. I mean, just as his personality.
Yes, they do feel like they're cut from like the same origin.
It's
not that they're
almost
similar guys.
Pseudo gangster talk. It's it's like so it's like I just wanted this to happen.
Faux
and it happened.
tough
and
New Yorkers, the guy's probably never actually been in a fight, but
and I think that he's much more intelligent than Donald Trump. Yes. But at the same time,
but you can see him as
persona.
The producer, right? He's a mover and a shaker.
Absolutely.
Hey, I got a picture for you. It's called The Night Stalker. All right, Dan McGavin, he's chasing a vampire.
And here we are talking about Dan Curtis again. The 70s.
This interview made me really love him more than before, though. And actually, there is a documentary out about him that I want to watch.
Ooh. All right, you'll have to hook me up with that, too. Yeah. But I'll say that it is interesting as we've gone into this season of our show. Mm-hmm. This is now our, I think, 400th episode.
I think that's about right, yeah.
This, as we hit the 70s, it is a lot of TV movies, and that seems weird, but at the same time, this is the era of that. And also, the TV movie was almost king of the day. On the commentary of this movie, Tim Lucas, the film historian who does Night Stalker commentary, he bothers to tell us in January of 1972, when this is on the on TV, he tells us what was in the theaters at the time. And he really does sort of underscore, like, there was nothing. There was no one gave a shit about what was in the theaters at this point,
right? Because
the TV movie was kind of king. I mean, there were still movies that were huge from like the year before that were still playing, like Dirty Harry and things like that. But that's why this became so huge. This was an era where they put money into a TV movie and they would go dark.
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't
a lot of supernatural stuff.
Feel TV really, aside from the commercial
only
breaks.
In its only the commercial breaks and also its timidness about a few things. But for its time, it also did push some boundaries. So it's interesting where standards and practices told them to back off.
My favorite part of the Dan Curtis interview, though, is when they talk about the test screen people applauded, and he's like, they turned to me and said, "We should have put this in theaters."
Yeah. That was great. He's like going, they lost their minds. And he's like, and they told us, we should have made this a feature. It should have gone to theaters.
Here's the thing, though. What is this, 75 minutes? And this thing just cooks, man.
It does.
It is exactly as long as it needs to be.
Yes. It makes some really interesting choices along the way, too.
No fat here at all. No needless exposition. We know so little about Carl Kolchak. but we know just enough.
We know this guy, and Darren McGavin is a god. Anyway,
oh my god, this is going to be the Darren McGavin love fest, no question about it.
Because I'm going to back up. I'm going to give you a little bit of history. This isn't anything written down. This is based on, well, just I've loved this movie for so long, and I'm a proud owner of the out of print Night Stalking, a 20th anniversary celebration of the movie and series by Mark Dawidziak, and it's a really good book that gives a lot of background.
Jealous
but anyway,
of that. I don't have that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it runs for a lot of money. There was actually one that he did an updated one 5 years after that I used to have, and I lost in a move. So I have the original 20th anniversary. But anyway, okay, so there's this guy named Jeff Rice. And he was a newspaper. He was actually a reporter in the 60s in Las Vegas as one of his jobs. He also had dreams of being an actor. And at one point, he moves out of Las Vegas. He goes down to LA. I guess he's trying to start his career. And along the way, he had an idea for a novel. So based on his newspaper experiences, and he thought of a great concept, which really hadn't been done too much, which is, what if I did a verite, true life, what if a realistic newspaper reporter encounters the supernatural, and it's like a crime reporter suddenly finding that, monsters exist, that a vampire is killing prostitutes or women in Las Vegas. And he creates this character, Carl Kolchak. He writes this novel. He tries to send it off to a guy he wants to represent him. And the guy, the agent goes, oh, this is great. I think it actually, publishers maybe will be interested, but I definitely think you could sell it for TV and movies. And Jeff Rice has never had an agent. And he goes, yeah, okay, try that. And he's very excited by this agent because the agent represents one of his childhood heroes, Richard Matheson. Richard Matheson, amazing novelist of sci-fi and horror, and of course Incredible Shrinking Man. He wrote the novel and the screenplay of the Incredible Shrinking Man and various awesome things. Ends up being one of the main writers for the Twilight Zone alongside Rod Serling. Writes some of the greatest episodes. So he's a brilliant dude. He reads the unpublished manuscript of Night Stalker, goes, this is great. And the agent goes, adapt it. Let's sell it to TV. The agent has not signed Jeff Rice. And basically is just kind of promising him stuff. And Jeff Rice has no idea that Richard Matheson's already interested and already writing a script. Anyway, so Richard Matheson gets the script prepared. Then the agent says, hey, buddy. And finally, Rice has copyrighted his script. His book. And he finds out that Richard Matheson has already written a script. So it's this real big tumble of things. They get it set up at ABC. ABC is excited because Richard Matheson is a name. The concept is great. Jeff Rice even thinks he's going to be cast and does screen tests as the... Yeah, not as Kolchak. He wrote a part specifically for himself, and that's the coroner, Mukherjee.
Okay.
And the coroner was supposed to be East Indian. Mukherjee is the last name, and it was supposed to be Mohandas Mukherjee. And Jeff Rice actually did a screen test where he made himself up as East Indian.
I was going to say, I take it Jeff Rice, not East Indian.
No, but in pictures, you could see how it would work. The pictures of him, you go, oh, okay, his features actually kind of lend themselves. But I'm sure that it was still some sort of brown face, and so I'm sure it was embarrassing. But this is 1970.
We call it a Fisher-Stevens fiasco.
It's a Fisher-Stevens. Johnny Five is alive. But so he's excited. His book may eventually be published, but it's going to be a TV movie, and he'll be in it. It has a director attached. Oops! Suddenly, ABC says we're changing producers. When we give it to Dan Curtis, and Dan Curtis, he's, Dark Shadows is done. And his 2 movies have come out for Dark Shadows. One was successful, one wasn't. And Dan Curtis, he doesn't want to be the horror guy necessarily, but this comes along and ABC just hands it to him. And he goes, I got to admit, this is a great script. Richard Matheson's great, and I love this concept, so let's do it. So now the script is in Dan Curtis's hands, and Dan Curtis says, I want this British guy to direct it. And well, actually, Dan Curtis wanted to direct it. ABC got
if
the
you
British
watch the
guy.
interview with the director, that
Yes,
British guy, he
yes,
keeps harping on.
yes.
Well, clearly Dan Curtis wanted to direct the picture.
Yeah, it's true, and he does direct the second one, The Night Strangler.
Yes. I actually thought, what's this guy's name? Moxie? He does a great job. This is a really well directed movie.
It really is. And again, when I say interesting choices for a TV movie, I'm like, they cared enough.
Mm-hmm.
Even though this thing was shot in like 3 weeks or something. I mean, it wasn't, they spent some money on it, but also the director had a vision, had ideas for this could be goofy TV movie that make it could have been a feature.
Yeah.
So it looks TV, but it reaches for more than TV.
Yeah.
So and I'm sorry, I'm kind of babbly. I should have written this out. But anyway, so these pieces are all kind of being slotted in without Jeff Rice's approval. He doesn't get approval as the writer. But Dan Curtis also says, no, I don't want him in the movie. And they cast literally like the day before they're about to start filming, they get Larry Linville to play. They change his name to, I think, Robert McCurgy, because this guy is the waspiest guy ever in the world, and certainly not East Asian.
Yeah.
And of course, Larry Linville would go on to play a doctor for a long time on MASH.
Yeah.
So this actually is the first time he's a doctor on TV wearing his little mask and all that stuff. And he goes on to be Frank Pierce on
Frank Burns
on MASH. Frank Burns, sorry, on MASH.
Yeah.
Hawkeye Pierce. And yes, right. I was getting my characters conflated. But he does a fine job, but I'm sure Jeff Rice is sitting going, that should have been me. And while all this is going along...
I mean, look, I'd rather look at Larry Linville than anyone in brown face, like...
Yes. Doing an accent, probably.
Yeah, oh, boy.
Okay. And I apologize for even doing that much. But we have... and then you have... Jeff Rice likes to take credit for this. He says he suggested Darren McGavin. Then you have Dan Curtis saying, no, I read this and all I could think was Darren McGavin. And you're like, whatever, guys. Yeah. Everyone wants to take credit for it. Regardless, Darren McGavin reads this thing and his agent says, don't. It's a goofy TV movie that has a monster in it. And he goes, well, let me read it. It's Richard Matheson. He reads it and then he likes it. But he doesn't quite trust his gut. So he handed it off to his wife and said, read this.
Yeah.
She reads it. She goes, you have to do this. And he goes, right. Am I that? So she backs him up and he goes, I'm in. And he creates this character.
Yep.
I mean, it's in the book. It is in Matheson's script. But then you see what he brings to it.
Yep. And
it took all these people to create Carl Kolchak. I will just throw this out there. In the book, which I have, which was going to be called the Kolchak Papers. And I'm sorry, John, I'm going on too long. Kolchak is a stocky, actually overweight, alcoholic Romanian American, whose grandfather had told him, his name was Carol with a Karel, that had been turned to Carl.
Gotcha.
And Kolchak is Romanian, the name.
Sure.
So he doesn't have necessarily disbelief about vampires because his grandfather used to tell him folklore stuff when he was a kid. He doesn't automatically believe it's a vampire, but once it becomes apparent, he's like, well, I know all this stuff from when I was a kid. And he's just a different character. He's a hard drinking dude, and obviously Gail is a prostitute, and it's a little bit more seedy, but it is very, very real. And the book is very entertaining. It eventually did get published as The Night Stalker. It wasn't published as the Kolchak Papers. This TV movie was almost called The Kolchak Papers, and then ABC went, that just doesn't work for us. They almost called it The Kolchak Tapes.
Well, that sounds a lot like the Norliss tapes to me.
Well, exactly. But what actually deterred them was a film that came out called The Anderson Tapes.
Sean Connery.
Yes, indeed. So they said, no, it's too close to that. And then someone suggested, I gotta say it, fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood.
That
was a title
is
this
the
almost
single
had.
worst title for anything ever, I think, maybe.
Interestingly, the ABC executive
that man was immediately fired.
That man was actually given 24 hours to get out of LA, just like Carl Kolchak. They brought him his bags and said, leave town.
I just imagine
Holy
like
hell.
a Simpsons thing where he said that there's silence. He just goes, "I'm fired, aren't I?" "Oh yeah, yeah."
Fee fi fo fum. I smell the blood.
I don't even know. I can't imagine that crossing anyone's mind as a title for anything.
No,
that is awful.
And the Night Stalker
who
was
would watch that?
It was a late go. And just like the classic The Thin Man, the Night Stalker becomes the name of the eventual series,
Kolchak,
even though the Night Stalker is actually Janos Skorzeny, the vampire, not Carl Kolchak.
Right,
but,
yeah.
Anyway,
yeah,
that is the long...
Because they didn't call the second one The Night Stalker Returns. It's a different thing.
That's right, The Night Strangler.
Yeah.
And the third was going to be The Night Killers. Mm-hmm. I love Carl Kolchak. I love Darren McGavin, who is a god. Folks at home, if you're not familiar with him, he's probably best known as the straight man to Jerry Lewis in his first solo outing, The Delicate Delinquent.
You think that's what he's best known for?
I'm joking.
I'm like Brendan, I don't know how out of touch with society you are, but he's the father from A Christmas Story.
He is the quote-unquote old man.
In another brilliant performance from him.
Another brilliant performance.
He's
Holy
so
hell.
Great in that movie.
Oh God, the whole thing with him and the dogs and and
when he's just like he can't, he's not cursing, he's just making nonsense, like
and everything about the lamp. It's a piece of art.
I mean, it's one of my biggest laughs in any movie is when he's furious at the break and he just goes, "Not a finger!" and runs out of the room. He's so mad he can't come up with his brain. You just watch him be like, "I need to say something. Not a finger."
He is so good.
He's so good in
but I will say
things.
he's so good in everything.
Yeah, I mean, he is a guy who you probably are familiar with, even if you aren't familiar with. He's just a guy who is in a bunch of things.
Obviously, I'm still sad that when he appeared in the X-Files, it wasn't as Carl Kolchak, but since Kolchak the Night Stalker inspired Chris Carter to create the X-Files, they did bring Darren McGavin in as a great character who had essentially created the X-Files back in the 50s. And
it's
it was
still
great.
A loving tribute to Kolchak, even if he's not actually Kolchak. I mean, in some ways, they make him more... I mean, obviously, they make him more important to that world than Kolchak would have been.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, he is sort of, in some ways, the father of Mulder, or what Mulder became. Because Fox Mulder is Carl Kolchak in many ways.
It's true. Someone who is serious-minded, but at the same time has a razor wit, who is the smartest guy in the room, even though he very often self-deprecates or
the ending of this movie is so X-Files.
Oh my God.
Because the thing about the X-Files I always thought was like, this is the Night Stalker that took off. Like, because the show only lasted the one season. This is Kolchak the Night Stalker, but repackaged in a way that turned it into a smash hit.
Yeah.
And actually, the Night Stalker didn't end because it was unpopular. It ended because of dissatisfaction from one Mr. McGavin.
Well, also...
That's what I've heard. That's what I hear.
Ratings were also bad. As much
Let's
as...
say maybe nobody fought him on his way out the door. Maybe
right, exactly.
Yeah.
I will say this, that it was... We should underline... We haven't even started talking about it. My apologies for rambling. Sorry, fans.
Hey, we don't have a poster to talk about since it's not a theatrical movie, so...
I would love to talk about that Sean film. Sorry.
Oh, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. And the one for Night Strangler is great, too.
Kino Lorber
I'm upset that they don't have one. He didn't do one for the series release.
Yeah, I know.
It's just a picture of Kolchak. And by the way, as we've been talking, I just pre-ordered a copy of that Blu-ray set of the series.
Is it available for pre-order?
You can get it from Kino Lorber right now from their website.
I was waiting for Amazon.
Yeah.
Well, anyway,
they have it at far lower than listed price though on Kino Lorber. So,
ooh, I will say this for the uninitiated before we start talking about it. This is important for it's a great vampire film, but also important because this was for a long time the highest rated TV movie
absolutely
in existence.
Yeah.
it blew ABC's mind. The numbers that came in, it had a 53 share, which in TV talk means like a quarter of the people in the country were watching watching The Night Stalker. So that's why it had a sequel TV movie, and that's why eventually it had its own TV series.
Mm-hmm.
I know all the mistakes they made in each one of those, including this one, which I love and dearly. You can see the mistakes that were made, and it's possible Kolchak the Night Stalker could have been an amazing series that went on and on and on, but there were some mistakes in the DNA, especially just a lack of. I mean, there was a suspension of disbelief with this character that they never addressed, and it needed to be addressed. As in, why this one guy? Why everywhere he goes, this happens? It was before the days where TV shows would think out some sort of master arc. Mm-hmm. Even X-Files, when it started, did not have a master plan. It started as The Night Stalker because it was episodic. Every episode was a new monster. Sure. Eventually, it had overarching storylines that tied things kind of together. And Kolchak the Night Stalker really could have benefited from that, but it didn't. So anyway, let's talk about this TV movie, which is one of my all-time favorites, and my voice is already tired. So you take it from here.
I love this movie as well. Ever since I saw it on a VHS copy that my dad had, because he had seen it when it was on and loved it. And we had the tape of The Night Stalker. And I was like, the dad from A Christmas Story is fighting a vampire?
I think CBS Video, back in the day, they used to do like mail order. Like if you were a fan of a series, you could buy videotapes that would have 2 or 3 episodes of your favorite show. And if you kept going every month, you'd eventually end up with like shelves and shelves of MASH or whatever it was.
My dad had a friend who had all of the Next Generation on tape. And I thought he was the coolest person in the world when I was a kid because I would just go over there and borrow tapes of Next Generation.
Well, in the 80s, I was the proud possessor of the entire run, or I guess maybe early 90s, of Kolchak the Night Stalker, which wasn't hard to do, 20 episodes.
I was going to say, that you spent a lot less money than my dad's friend on all 180 episodes of Next Generation.
But it was cool with those black and red spines of the VHS tapes all up there. Was like, there's Kolchak.
Yeah.
There's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Anytime I want to watch the swamp creature episode, I can.
My dad every once in a while does go, wonder if Terry's just kicking himself that you can watch all of Next Generation just on Netflix now.
I guarantee you, everyone that's ever bought a box set of anything is now kind of sitting there going, "Oh, I could just have the streaming service and not fill my shelf."
I really am only buying specialty stuff like the aforementioned Kolchak the Night Stalker Blu-ray set this is premium, stuff from a company that, is for the real nerds.
Oh. Yeah. Kino Lorber is an amazing company.
I've been getting rid of a lot of my physical copies of stuff unless they're like Arrow Video, Criterion, Kino Lorber. Like that's the kind of stuff I have still on the shelf because that's primo. Like that's like having vinyl to me a little bit, where it's sort of like this is the good copy of this.
Well, it's about. I don't mean the extras as in special features, though they of course load that up too. It's just the extra care. It will never look this good or sound this good,
right?
Or have special features like commentaries.
Right. And so that's
by the way, when we get towards the end of this, I will share with some of the weird batshit things that Tim Lucas says at the end of this thing, where I liked his commentary, and then at the end I was like, wow, what a wrong-headed take. He has a weird take on the end of this movie, but we're not there yet.
He never should have killed that vampire, damn it.
We'll get there. But no, I'm the same way. Like if it's a company like that, you know that you're not going to find something as well presented.
Right. Yeah, that's the stuff I seek out these days because most other stuff will find its way to me digitally in some fashion.
Yeah.
So yes, this movie opens with our book-ended framing device of Kolchak listening to a tape he's recorded of a book he's written about the incident of this movie we're watching, if that isn't complicated enough.
But it's a framing device.
It's a framing device that gives us our narration. I love Dan Curtis's comment in his interview. It goes, "Oh, I love narration. I love narration."
Yes.
And I'm just going like, dude, It's just this thing where he's like, I hear people say don't use narration. I say use it in everything. It almost felt like he was saying that, yeah.
I mean, he
it
also
tells you what's happening.
He also came from soap opera. So that kind of stuff of like internal monologues, and that is his wheelhouse. I say narration is great if it's this well written. And also this
and it fits the aesthetic of it so well. It gives it this. He's a reporter. We're hearing his notes. It's got a noirish vibe to it. The thing I love so much about this and the next movie and the series and just the whole Kolchak thing in general, and X-Files did this as well, is we are exploring the paranormal, the supernatural, the larger than life, but we are doing it in the format of a procedural. It is still just a detective story. It just so happens to be that our detective is hunting a supernatural creature.
Right.
And so that's that. I just love that. But I love still the matter-of-fact presentation of it. It's a guy looking into a mystery.
And at this stage, one of the reasons why this concept was so great was this is still the early days of. It is strange to say after we've been doing this show and we started in the 1930s and now we're up to the 70s, it was still weird and rare that anyone put these folkloric creatures in the modern day. So here, I mean, other than Count Yorga, which they actually bring up in the commentary, and they bring up, I think maybe the Dan Curtis interview as well. Yorga was not because it was great, because we've watched both of those now, and they're
great is not a word I would have thrown in any of it. But
I mean, Dracula 1972 and Count Yorga were some of the first to go, oh yeah, these are immortal creatures. They could be walking around right now. So this taking the aesthetic of, as you say, a crime procedural detective show, also with the flavorings of throwback journalism drama, and comedy. This owes a lot to, as they always say, the pitch was the front page meets Dracula.
Never don't exactly love a bustling newsroom setting. Just always,
oh my God,
so great. Just love this.
And Carl Kolchak himself references and does a shout out to Ben Hecht.
Yes.
He's like, I'll light a candle to Ben Hecht. And you're like going, there you go. There's the front page. They're acknowledging we're doing that stuff. The fast talking, brilliant newsmen who are all cynical. They've seen it all.
You talk about the narration, how good it is. I wrote down just one of the first things it talks about. He's talking about this woman, Cheryl Hughes, who's driving.
Yes.
And he goes, Cheryl Hughes, en route to her doom.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, absolutely that's some sweet pulpy crime narration right there. I love it.
It's so good. And you're realizing that it's like, is that how he would write his news article, or is this for his book where he's being more florid?
Yeah.
And actually, I believe Carl Kolchak's actual news reporting was probably pretty florid too.
Oh, I mean, just based on the way the editor reacts to it.
Yes.
You're like,
and
it's got to sound somewhat like this.
Also, in his opening narration, he's like going, she's just mad enough to walk the 8 blocks, to her house. And you're like going, it's just those kinds of details. And Matheson, Jeff Rice, by the way, even though he felt kind of shunted by the experience, still loved Matheson and still loved what Matheson did. He goes, yeah, he changed stuff, but he's brilliant. And he condensed everything right there.
The guy was an amazing writer. I mean, there's no question
about it. Yeah, and he's sitting there going, and Darren McGavin, he changed stuff about Carl Kolchak. He goes, but that is Kolchak. I'm sorry. He's like, once I see that, I'm like, that's the character, even though he's not like the one I wrote.
I love this in the trivia where they talk about how Kolchak was originally described as being dressed in Bermuda shorts and wearing an Aloha shirt, but Darren McGavin said, that doesn't sound like anyone I know.
Yeah. Well, he had a great take on the character, which is he really latched onto the thing there's background in the show where they say that he had been fairly respectable reporter in New York, like with the big papers.
Yeah.
He got fired many times. He ended up in Chicago, got fired. He ended up in Boston, got fired. He ended up in LA and got fired.
Once again, about as much backstory as we get on him, and it's just enough to tell you
it's just enough
who this guy is and why I love Carl Kolchak, which is he's a rabble-rouser. He's a troublemaker.
He's a troublemaker, and as Tim Lucas
a righteous troublemaker.
Right.
A guy who's going to piss people off.
He pointed out a great thing, which is Darren McGavin at this point is in his 40s, like late 40s. He's almost 50 at this point.
But I will say, rough looking because he looks 60. Like,
Yeah. Well, yeah. But also, I think the fact that he soaked up sun, which makes perfect sense. If you're living in Vegas, everyone in this is pretty tanned and sunburned.
It is the aesthetic I love, though, because you know how much I love the detective shows of this era.
Yes.
I love it gives me the same visceral like comfort of Rockford or Columbo. Just
you
this
can smell
vibe.
the BO of all these characters.
Everybody's a little grimy. People aren't gorgeous. Like
no,
Darren McGavin would never be cast as Kolchak come 1980.
I know. Well, eventually he became Stuart Townsend, so
that's what I mean. He'd be a hunk. There's no way you could make a Night Stalker now and not have a handsome Kolchak.
But what Lucas says about it is the character fits in this great middle ground where he is reminiscent of like a Ben Hectian 1930s, 1940s fast talking kind of romantic hero journalist. But this is the early 1970s, so he's also, just what you said, he is a rabble-rouser who is only after the truth and doesn't care about the machinations of politicians and state, local government. He will tell the truth, and he is beholden to nothing but
and
the
that's
truth.
What makes him the hero of this thing.
Yes, he's grating.
Not...
He's aggressive.
Yeah.
He's smarmy. Yeah. He's also very funny and likable. He's not a dirtbag, but he's walking a fine line.
He's not a dirtbag, but he can fit into the slimy underworld very easily, which aids him in his crime
unlikeliest. Yeah, he's the unlikeliest of heroes, which is why I love the likable dirtbag noble that he is in the show, in this movie, and the other movies, and the TV show.
I mean, very much like a lot of noir heroes, right? In the past, a lot of like the Bogart characters were like that.
Yes.
They walked on the dark side with the slimy people, but ultimately they were forces of good.
Yeah, and so he is sympathetic. Plus, Darren McGavin, even when he's being hard-nosed or assholish, you love him.
Yep.
There is a twinkle, there is a wit.
Yep.
And if he needs to sell the dramatic lines, he fucking sells them. There's a line in this where even Tim Lucas drops out. He goes, I'm going to stop my commentary because this is one of the greatest lines. And he just stops for a line that we're not to yet. But, oh, God damn, do I love this.
I love it. I mean,
we haven't gotten past the first scene.
We haven't, but we're setting up, which is so much of the reason this works, is the character of Carl Kolchak.
Right.
As much, if not more than the plot itself, because... the
concept is great, undeniably.
It's why it should have worked as a show, right? It's because you go like, well, I'd follow this guy anywhere. I want to see this guy every single week on my television.
Yes.
Who wouldn't?
Yeah. I would watch episodes of him doing stuff that didn't involve the supernatural. I love Carl Kolchak.
Yeah, man. I mean, that would have been an interesting route to have gone with the show. Was not every week, was it a supernatural thing?
It could tie in, but what if it's some rich dude who financially backed some satanic cult or something?
There are some X-Files episodes that are not directly supernatural.
That's very true.
And some of them are really good and actually scarier than some of the supernatural ones.
Word.
So we see this woman get out of her car and get grabbed in this alley, and then some garbage men find her body in a trash can.
Yeah, and all this being narrated from the future by Kolchak. Yeah.
And then we get our opening titles over a POV from the body's perspective on the autopsy table.
Holy shit, this is so great. Mm-hmm. Because there was also an interview on this, as you probably watched, with the composer.
Yes.
Who was a guy who worked with Dan Curtis. We've already talked about him when we did
the story Dan Curtis tells about this guy in his interview is great. He goes, he comes up to me and he says, I got the theme for this Night Star thing. I said, hum it for me. He goes, what do you just hum me the theme. And he did. He's like, great, you hired. And I never hired anyone else ever again. He did every project.
Actually, that was for Dark Shadows.
That was the Dark Shadows.
So he came up and hummed, which is one of the great themes.
Oh, it's
but
great,
he hummed
man.
the theme. And he reused them.
Yeah.
So
I never hired another
guy
composer.
We talked about for the Dark Shadows,
which is great. But the Dark Shadows has great music. This has great music. The guy is great, and he's got a style.
He's very self-effacing in his interview, where he's like going, "I'm just, I was a working guy," but he had the idea. He goes, "Look, they fought me on it because for the opening title sequence, nothing." He goes, "I didn't write anything for it. I thought it was just a better place to stop because people think that's what you're going to get. And it is this great POV, the camera's shooting up, and you're seeing the coroner and his assistants cutting open the body. You don't see the body, obviously.
Right.
But they're looking at you as the corpse and saying, well, this is strange. Huh. There's no whatever sciencey talk, but essentially they're saying there's no blood in this body.
Yeah. Seems to be
then
some
the
kind
coroner
of
says,
massive loss of blood.
Yeah, and then the coroner says, this doesn't leave this room.
Yeah.
I love instantly we're in conspiracy territory. Instantly
this
we're
thing
like,
never stops the conspiracy territory.
I know.
We can't let anyone know.
Yeah. So that's how this movie opens. Just the title, The Night Stalker, and credits while these guys are cutting a body open.
Little Chris Carter glued to the screen with this.
Imagine a little Brendan Jones glued to the screen, except for I saw this one, obviously not live. I saw this when it reran as part of the CBS night movie or whatever it was.
You're telling me you weren't watching this as a toddler?
3 years old, I might have, but I tend to doubt I did.
Yeah.
I did watch the TV series live and actually remember it, which is weird.
Well, that's more like mid-70s by the time we got to
that's like 74, but I was still like, I was 5 years old, and I remember the werewolf episode watching it live.
That's about when I was watching X-Files, though, so that makes sense.
It is interesting. It's like I remember I don't remember my life at 5, but I remember episodes of TV shows I was watching.
100%, yeah. I just think I remember watching episodes of Next Generation live, very much so, especially down the stretch. Definitely like that finale. Yeah, let's see here. They say there's nothing else unusual except for this body's missing all of the blood.
Oh.
And so so they call Kolchak back in. He's on his way out of town, and they call me in because there's a murder, and I guess because he's walking the crime beat, you know.
Yeah, and so he comes in, and Kolchak, for the folks who. Oh, I did stop that little behind-the-scenes scene. You set it up, though. Darren McGavin read that description of Kolchak and said, that's not how I see him.
Yeah.
And his
that's
idea
not how he
was...
sees anyone, apparently, yeah.
well, he just was like going, this character his whole goal is to get back to where he was in New York. And he liked the idea that Kolchak froze himself in time and never bought another suit. So somewhere in the early 60s, when he got fired in New York, he had this seersucker suit, and he still wears it, even though it's not proper gear for Las Vegas heat. But he walks around in this seersucker suit and tie, and he wears this ridiculous straw hat, and he wears white tennis shoes, which actually does fit.
Yeah.
And
what I love about this is it's his costume, just like Columbo in the rumpled trench coat. These are iconography of these characters.
An iconic character just by look.
Yeah.
And it fits perfect.
It works
so
well.
He drives a beat up Camaro convertible.
Yep.
Like a 60s Camaro convertible that's rusted.
Cool at one time probably, but not now.
Yep. I do love like the faded playboy aspect of him too, where it's like he was kind of a player at one point, but he is not anymore. But he's still kind of living that lifestyle.
Fox, man, Kolchak Fox.
Yeah, he does. He has a serious romantic relationship with a woman who sells her body.
Yeah,
but they do love each other.
Way too hot for Darren McGavin.
God bless Carol Lindley. But anyway, so
his performance does sell you that this woman might be attracted to him.
Well, for one thing, I think Kolchak does not judge.
Yes.
That's what I do think is great, is that...
It's not just what he looks like, but she would be attracted to things we're attracted to about Kolchak, which is there's a decency to him. There is this righteousness and search for the truth.
There's a weird nobility to this scumbag.
And a guy who just all he says is like, I wish you didn't. You should stop working at night.
Yeah, you should stop working at night. And he's just worried about her in case, not about what she does for a living, but I don't want you being killed by this serial killer.
Exactly.
But so he shows up in the offices of the Las Vegas Daily News, I think is the name of the paper.
I believe that's
and he introduces himself by walking in to all of his coworkers and just going, "Good morning, slaves."
Yeah.
I love this man. I want to marry Carl Kolchak. Is that wrong? You can do it now.
No,
you can't do it in 1971.
No, yeah, back then they would have frowned on it.
Oh my God.
But he comes in and right away you're like, oh, I know who this guy is.
And Vincenzo, his editor, slaps a new story into
everything
his hat.
You want out of a grouchy old Kolchak.
They fit
editor.
their archetypes so perfectly. Yeah. Simon Oakland, for all the praise we're going to dump on Darren McGavin, Simon Oakland, there's a reason why they decided his character, for some reason, gets bounced from city to city with his reporter.
Yeah.
It's because you can't imagine anybody else.
Nope, it's too perfect.
Tony Vincenzo, he's so fucking good.
Mm-hmm. It's great. And
he's very sweaty.
Yeah.
Very
sweaty. Yeah. This whole thing is sweaty. I love it. I love men in thick, heavy suits in the middle of Las Vegas heat. Well, damn, do I love this, man.
Vincenzo's always wearing like a polo shirt, but it's a 1970s kind of uncomfortably fit. Like he's a big dude, and it's like maybe a size too small.
Everybody looks miserable in this thing.
It's great.
I love it so much.
And he is exactly what you're saying. He is what you want.
Yeah.
He's the guy that does respect Carl Kolchak, but gives him no slack.
I can't print this, Kolchak. Come on.
Oh my God. So he calls him back from his vacation to give him what Kolchak is
great
offended
start
by.
To any kind of detective story is they called me back in. I'm not even, that was.
Yeah.
I was off the case, boss. Yeah. I'm not even supposed to be here today.
He goes, this is a 2-bit murder. You called me back for this? Mm-hmm. It's great.
Yeah. So he does go and question the coroner.
Not the coroner. He has a friend in the coroner's office.
The coroner's office, yes. And this is the character that Rice wanted to play.
No. The character that Rice wanted to play was Larry Linville.
Oh, right. Yes.
McCurgy.
This is just some guy.
Works. Well, he's a doctor at the hospital, but he's Kolchak's at the hospital.
And Kolchak, we immediately see here, as we'll see several times, Kolchak is able to kind of sweet talk people into giving him a little, because there's immediately this guy's like, we're not saying anything about it. It's not, it's all.
Kolchak has, like any good reporter, he has a network of informants,
which I love that we see the entirety of his network in this movie.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. I love it. I love all these little character bits. This guy's pretty boring, but he has this history. You can already tell.
And that's always the key, I feel like, to the success of these things. It's the little details that take it to the next level. Because we've seen tons of people hunt killers and monsters and stuff like that.
And he's like, "Oh, come on, man!" It's like, you still owe me for the time we went out." And it's always these little things. He's like,
"So this
all
is
right."
The guy tells
them there was a significant missing a lot of blood.
Loss of blood. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Then on to the next thing, which is his girlfriend, who is a hooker, though they never say it, but it is clearly she's a lady of the night.
And she's introduced not only because she's his love interest, but as Kolchak tells us in his voiceover, she knew the girl that was killed, who worked as a swing shift change girl at one of the casinos.
Yeah.
And what I love about it, this is all very coded, because he just wants information. So he's talking to his girlfriend. She's sad about her friend, and he goes, did she have like an abusive boyfriend or anything? And she goes, she didn't like men.
Yeah.
And it's all like, and you have the writers in these books going, she was a lesbian. They just could not say it.
And she knew karate.
Right.
Which is and that's when Kolchak's like, she knew karate.
Yeah,
it's like a little bit. I will say this is the only thing where I'm like, and someone still killed her.
It is meant to be like, how could anyone have gotten the better of a karate trained lesbian?
Yeah.
But it is supposed to just mean that Carl Kolchak's peaked, because
we're still getting.
How is she an easy target? It
seems like there would have been more of a struggle of some sort at the very least.
Right.
So then he gets a call though that they found another body. And this one's on a beach.
Not a beach.
Well, not a beach. It's in sand. It looks
a sand pit.
Well, of course they don't have beaches, but
it's there's an overpass and there's like undeveloped lots.
Yeah.
And then there's a concrete kind of slope, and then at the bottom of it, where they're probably going to do some sort of, maybe they'll turn it into a river or whatever, like the LA River. But it's just a sand pit. The reason all this is important is for a very awesome observation that is made.
Which is, there's a dead body lying in the sand pit, but there are no footprints near it, going towards it, around it, anywhere, leading from it. So what the hell's going on?
Yeah, the scene opens with another great character actor. We're introduced to the sheriff of Las Vegas.
This thing
Sheriff
is
Butcher.
ripe with character actors, man.
They picked
Claude Akins. Come on,
I love me some Claude Akins.
Come on, because he screams authenticity as soon as you see him.
I love the fact that he always mispronounces Kolchak's name, and it's not even addressed. It's just perfect. His character would. That's a way he shows disrespect.
Oh, he fucking hates Kolchak.
It's Kolchak. He calls him Kolchak.
It comes through the screen how much this guy can't deal with Kolchak.
And he wears a cowboy hat as part of his sheriff's uniform.
Claude Akins,
this is basically pre-Sheriff Lobo, which he was.
Claude Akins, though, I primarily know from a movie I've seen many, many times, and that is Rio Bravo. My father's all-time favorite movie, so I've seen that movie 10 to 15 times.
Yes.
My dad can tell you, don't watch it with him. He knows every single line, and he'll say it along with the movie.
I won't do it.
No.
The sheriff is there, so that means they're paying attention, and there are other cops. And, of course, Kolchak is the only reporter that's on the scene, and he shows up. But it's interesting. The sheriff does not like him, but he's like going, just don't touch the body. Stay back.
Just rolls up right into the middle of crime scenes all the time. And there's not a single scene where somebody goes, you need to get back behind the line or whatever. He's right in there with his camera out, and he's just... Some of my favorite moments of this is when there's actual violent action happening, and Kolchak's just off to the side snapping away.
There are parts of this movie where I'm like going, oh man, no one researched what cops actually do, and the fact it's pretty amazing that Carl is the first man on the scene at a lot of the shit. Maybe Carl's the killer. Anyway, so he drives up.
I mean, that would have been an interesting turn in the script, and I feel like maybe if this was a longer feature film, that might have been a plot point.
They go down, and before they even go down, they're like, how did she get down there? But they go down, examine the body, they turn it over, and it's like, look at her throat.
What happened to her throat? We hear.
And he goes,
we don't
Cheryl
really
Hughes
get,
also lost
get to
a lot
see
of blood. He says, Cheryl Hughes lost a lot of blood. And the sheriff spins around and goes, where'd you hear that? Was that in the news? He goes, no, wasn't in the news.
Two things, right? How does he know that? And two, let's not try to make this into pattern killings, Kolchak.
Exactly.
That's the whole thing.
Exactly it.
I love that by the time they're like 3-4 bodies that are missing blood, they're like, why are you linking all these together, Kolchak?
Yeah. Where is this leap coming from? But also they're down there and they're like going, she's like in the middle of the sand pit, which is easily like 30 feet.
And they find
from
her purse up
on the thing and signs of a struggle.
And they go, but there's no signs down here. And then finally somebody says, what, this guy throw her down here?
I love the fact that it's Kolchak doing it. He's looking, it's like no footprints. How did she end up in the middle of and then he goes, what do you do? Throw her?
Yeah.
And that's a chill. Yeah. I love that.
And later we'll see a lot of a vampire throwing people. So which I never.
And we'll also hear this a lot of bum 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 bum.
That music.
It has a very jazzy score.
It does, and it feels like the detective shows I love in this era, where you're just like, all right, Kolchak's on the case, baby.
We're
swinging and solving crimes, baby.
We're swinging. We're on the beat, baby.
That's right. Yeah. I just love the tone and look and style of this era of TV, particularly crime TV. Because it reminds me of another show I love from this era, Vegas, set in Vegas.
Yes.
I love me some Vegas, man.
Yeah, Robert Urich as Dan Tana, and I watch that every week as well.
Love Robert Urich.
I mean, here's the thing. James Garner, very handsome man, and Robert Urich, very handsome man.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, like your point was, why this era will never come again is we had lead stars of television shows, heroes, romantic heroes, even though Columbo wasn't really a romantic hero.
No, he was taken.
He was taken. The lovely Mrs. Columbo.
Yeah.
We never meet. But I will say
did we? In when she Kate Mulgrew.
Kate loves a mystery. I'll tell you that much. But the thing is that it's refreshing, as you say. It's these character actors. These are the faces of this period, and they were not
more drawn to a Peter Falk or a Darren McGavin than I am to any handsome guy on a procedural today.
They're not glossed up, and
even
I know
Garner
that
was handsome, but had a lot of character.
Right, and
Urich I love Robert Urich, but he was more stock leading man. Still great.
And I will say that, Darren McGavin was a fit dude for his age, as a younger guy, is the stereotypically handsome Irish guy.
I love
the early.
I love the Mike
McGavin.
Hammer show that he did in the 50s,
yep.
and that is much more like, oh damn, Darren McGavin, looking good, looking good.
But
my friend.
It's an era when they put character actors as the leads, instead of just glossy, handsome, and
it'd be like if the next CBS procedural starred William H. Macy,
Yes.
I would kill to see William H. Macy.
I will say, as a flashback, even though it was, of course, mainly comedy, but Monk was a great flashback to this era, where it's like Tony Shalhoub.
Well, actually, I feel like that
all day long.
I was a huge fan of that mid-2000s USA Network slate because they all felt like flashbacks to this era of television. Where it's like we're having fun. I was a massive fan of Psych. That was my absolute favorite.
I have never watched, and people have always told me I need to watch.
So funny, but also good mysteries.
Okay,
you would love it, and if you
have the box set.
Well, yeah, but also it's all on Peacock. Another plug for, and as is Columbo and Rockford Files. So,
listeners, that's me trying to figure out whether I'm going to spend money on Peacock or Apple TV. Won't you write in? And tell me which one I should go with.
You know what? Let's put up a poll on our Patreon and see if we can get. Should Brendan get Peacock or Apple TV Plus?
I'm torn. Torn between two lovers.
They're both very
fool.
good, and they both have their advantages there.
Strengths and weaknesses.
So anyway, now Kolchak turns in his piece about this. Now that there's two bodies, and this is where we get the first scene of Vincenzo being like, "I can't print this. This is pretty wild, Kolchak."
He literally said. Now, of course, Kolchak, what he's done is. He has connected the two killings because of the similarities.
Kolchak doesn't see this as anything particularly wild.
But then Shinzo's like going, who said there was a massive loss of blood? The police? I haven't seen that.
A random person from the coroner's office? That's not going to cut it, Kolchak.
Yeah, and he's like going, who said these two were connected? The police haven't said that. Yeah. And he's right. As an editor, he's saying the right thing.
That is the thing. Vincenzo's not a bad guy.
No, that's what I love about him. He's absolutely
just like, Kolchak. He wants Kolchak to be right, but he's not going to go out on a limb and risk his own job for it.
Well, he's the middleman, unfortunately, and when he crumbles at the end,
FBI Deputy Director Walter Skinner.
Exactly. When he crumbles at the end, and when Bernie crumbles at the end, all due to powers above them, it is disheartening. It breaks your heart.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, those guys are his friends. Even Vincenzo is Carl's friend, but he can't fight the system.
What am I supposed to do?
And Carl was born to fight the fucking system.
He spent his whole life doing that. It's what's cost him his job. You get the sense that Kolchak was told many times, like, just play the game, Kolchak. No.
This is another reason this all resonated so well, and this character resonated, is that thing of, this was the early 70s. This is Watergate. Yeah. This is Woodward and Bernstein, and people were seeing reporters at this point as being crusading heroes.
Yeah, exactly.
We wanted people to tell the truth and stick it to the powers that be. Mm-hmm. And Kolchak's doing that, even when he's fighting swamp creatures and he's fighting werewolves and zombies.
I will get the truth out about this swamp creature. You hear me? No one will stop me.
I bring that episode up a lot simply because it is one of the best of the actual series. It is so good. God damn, do I love it. Anyway,
the one that always sticks out in my head is the one where there's like a secret Nazi group. That's the one that I don't know, it's one of my favorites, but it's the one that for some reason is burned the most into my brain.
I also love the one with the Rakshasa that appears as your most trusted person. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. The demon that chose it. And he meets an Indian holy man who is like another Night Stalker who tells him how to beat the Rakshasa. Fucking love him.
Can I just say I love so much that David Chase, creator of The Sopranos,
I know.
One of his I don't know if it was his first, but it was very early in his career, was writing for Kolchak the Night Stalker.
He wrote the notorious episode with the headless biker gang leader.
And you know who has the story credit on that too, right?
Who?
Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale. One of the first things they ever sold was that story pitch to Kolchak the Night Stalker that was then teleplay by David Chase. So you're looking at some real heavy hitters behind that episode.
In early days. And I will say it's a great concept, but Chopper. Yeah. But it is a really embarrassing. Like
it's very
the effects
silly.
Are awful.
It's
awful.
It's very silly.
Budget
also,
let down The Night Stalker quite a bit.
Yeah,
budget.
But I still kind of love every episode.
Oh no, I do too.
Because Kolchak's there. So
it's Darren McGavin walking around being called Kolchak.
Excuse me, is Carl Kolchak in that? Then I think it's going to be pretty great.
Then I think that's a must watch.
Yeah.
Anyway.
He also is told, leave the cops alone. Stop showing up at murder scenes, Kolchak. Advice he will not take for the rest of this runtime by any stretch of the imagination.
It's like he never even heard it. He never even heard that advice.
No. So then there's another victim.
Yep.
And Kolchak is like, well, now there has to be a fucking pattern.
This one the woman with the dog?
This is the woman who's found in her apartment.
Oh, I thought that one was after. You're right.
Yeah. This is one we don't see the attack at all or anything like that.
No, we don't.
The dog one we see the attack, which is awesome.
Yeah, it is. So this actually, Tim Lucas says, brought up the fears of home invasion, which were also very timely because that was not a thing you got to see often in TV shows. But with the Manson family murders and stuff like that, it was like, oh, right. The idea that someone would actually just knock on your door and then kill you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she dies right there in the doorway.
Yeah.
And Carl Kolchak shows up, says something very insensitive, and then the cop goes, hey, take it easy. He actually makes a Bela Lugosi reference, which Tim Lucas points out as being that's one of the first postmodern vampire references in a vampire show. He goes, that's one of the first times anyone in a vampire movie refers to like Dracula.
This is still not the one I'm talking about because you're going to talk about the victim's mother, right?
Yeah.
That's
is that
later.
Not this one?
That's later. There's literally just a scene where Kolchak's not even there. We just see the police and there's a woman dead in her home.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and this is quick because it's just like, and there was a third victim.
Right, and the cop is handed at her glass of milk, and he dusts the glass of milk.
Yes. Because then this is only there to set up him talking to Jenk.
Right, and I will now apologize to people who thought I had this memorized. I don't.
I've lost all respect for you, Brendan. I really thought
I'm getting the murders time sequence mixed up.
To be fair, I wrote down everything that happened as it happened while I was watching.
Look at your notes, man.
Oh, that's just
every time you actually show me the notes. It's stunning.
My 3 pages of. I literally just write down every single thing that happens as it happens.
Well, you're absolutely right. This
one helps that I've seen this multiple times because sometimes I miss shit by doing this. Actually, in the movies I haven't seen, this one I was actually kind of able to just be like, and then Kolchak does this, and then Kolchak does that. This introduces us to Bernie Jenk, who I must talk about Bernie Jenks.
I know you will
because
great actor.
I love Ralph Meeker. Ralph Meeker is one of the most underrated actors of the 1950s.
Kiss Me Deadly.
Kiss Me Deadly is in my top 5 all-time noirs. I love
so good.
That
it is
movie
so weird and great.
It is. If you have not seen that, really, that one stands out from the pack of film noirs.
Homework.
It really is very unique. He's great in it. Obviously,
it'll leave you shaking your head, but it is so great.
It is intensely watchable, though.
And tell the people the connection between Darren McGavin and Ralph Meeker, besides the fact of this film.
That they both played Mike Hammer.
They both played Mike Hammer.
Because Kiss Me Deadly, of course, is an adaptation of a Mickey Spillane novel. I'm sad that we never got another Ralph Meeker Mike Hammer performance. They didn't do that back then.
I know.
In the same way, I don't understand why Bogart didn't play Philip Marlowe in 5 more movies after The Big Sleep. It makes
I love these two together so much that it would have been great if, not as a series regular, but it would have been great if Ralph Meeker as Bernie showed up in another episode at some point.
Yeah.
Because he even says at the end of this movie, he goes, let me know where you end up, okay, Carl?
Yeah.
So Carl has pretty much had it with Bernie at the end of this. But
most people probably know him. One of the biggest movies was Dirty Dozen, of course.
Yeah.
And The Naked Spur, which is a Jimmy Stewart western that I enjoy as well.
Ralph Meeker is great, and as you say, underrated character.
Very, very much so. Yeah, I just think he had I don't know, Hollywood didn't know what to do with him or something. But he worked forever. It's not that he wanted for work.
Yeah.
But he definitely segued into TV guest roles and stuff like that. He never really had the thing that was.
And he's good in this. He doesn't phone this in. He's a well-developed character.
Very good in this. Has gravitas. Really feels authentic. I mean, like I said, everybody.
But he also feels very much like these guys are longtime friends. Yeah. And they, that whole thing
the camaraderie
when
two Mike Hammers come together.
Yes. The thing in the press conference
Stacey
where
he shows up. No.
With the mustache.
Yeah.
They're
finally putting that out on DVD, which I'm thrilled about. That's never been.
It was a good casting, but it's TV. You know, it's like, okay, whatever.
I like TV.
They put it in the time period,
yes,
which I appreciate.
I did appreciate that about it as well. He captured something about that. I think
I like him as an actor.
Oh, you got it.
I think he's supposedly a horrible human being, from what I hear, but doesn't matter. Anyway.
I wouldn't be surprised.
But I love the thing in the press conference where he goes, and Mr. Kolchak will be interested to know. And you have the voiceover where he goes, such formality from a guy who always guzzles my beer.
Yeah.
Right.
That. Ooh. Yeah, Kolchak. So here he is telling Bernie about these, like, look, it's pattern killings. There's something going on. You as the FBI, you're interested in this, right? He's like, I can't get involved. Only you're the only one linking these things, Kolchak. As the FBI,
is this the poolside meeting?
This is the poolside meeting, and he's just like, I can't, And then eventually he gets him to go like, can poke around a little bit, like.
Yeah, like he goes, I guess this is just what Carl does, and he wears down the FBI guy who's like, I can't officially tell you anything. Yeah. And
look into a couple of things, I guess, like.
But I also love the fact that they're just these dudes drinking beers by the poolside in like a hotel in Las Vegas, and this gorgeous woman in a bikini walks by who's probably like one of the servers there. And she goes, hi, Carl. And he's like, oh, hey, Jeannie, or whatever. Yeah. And she walks off. And Bernie, the FBI guy's like, you know her? He's like, oh, yeah, she's great. Yeah. And they keep talking. And by the end, he goes, yeah, I got to go, Carl. He goes, where you got to go? And he chases off after the bikini girl. And Carl just goes, yeah, that's Bernie. These dudes.
Just tiny little things that go like, they know each other. There's a thing here. We don't need to dive into it.
And then he gets paged. It's like, Carl Kolchak, please pick up the white courtesy phone.
And it's his pal at the coroner's office again.
Yep.
Calling him and saying, hey, this might have something to do with something. Somebody stole a whole bunch of blood from a clinic last night, or whatever.
I love it. He goes, this hospital just got knocked over. He goes, yeah. Well, I mean, why is this interesting? He goes, what'd they steal? Drugs or whatever. He goes, blood. And Carl Kolchak's like, oh goodness, is that true? Oh,
he almost turns to the camera and says, the plot thickens.
He does a big wink. Blood, you say?
I think so. I think this is one of the act breaks here too. This is a commercial break on that because we come back in on the press conference now.
Do you get thrown by these commercial breaks that aren't commercial breaks? It is interesting.
Yes, I do, especially in something like this because I'm watching it as a movie. If I'm watching an episode of Columbo, it goes with the story.
Right.
But when it's a fit, like I put this on from I keep this in the cabinet with my movies, not with the TV shows.
Right.
So when I put this on, it's like, oh, right, this is a TV thing. Because I'm getting wrapped up in it like jarring. A film. And then all
but
of a sudden,
I do like, as a writer, I do like watching the mechanics of how these are structured. Because it's not a 3-act structure when you're doing episodic television or, of course, a TV movie.
Yeah.
So he had to Matheson had to work in like 5 different
they're all, I mean, like I watching it every time it went, I was like, oh, that's a solid TV act break.
That's a solid TV act break.
Yeah. I'm a big appreciator. I actually really do still like the format of network TV, even if I think the content is, but I do like.
And I hate commercials.
I hate the commercials, but I like just the way it's broken down.
Right.
With the act breaks. And I still think, like, if you watch any procedural, or I stand by any episode of any Star Trek show that aren't the modern streaming ones, that is like clockwork, man. You can learn TV format by watching that stuff because you're like,
very true.
Damn, that's a good act break. There's so many episodes of Next Generation where I'm just like, solid act break, you guys. That's great stuff.
That was masterfully done.
I mean, that's now me having seen that show all the way through like 6-7 times. So I'm going, now I am to the point where I'm going like, Damn, that's how you close an act. Wow. Good
John,
work, Joe Manoski. And yeah,
you have a problem.
That's a Next Generation writer. I know that writing staff.
A problem.
I know this. Yeah.
Have a problem.
I can recognize on sight the writers of the Next Generation.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know what Noreen Shankar looks like. Ladies.
All I can say is it 500 yards or 500 feet you're supposed to stay away from them? I always get that mixed up.
It's feet. Ron Moore keeps saying it's yards, but you know.
Holy shit! How's that ankle bracelet working out for you? Anyway, so
they have this press conference, and this is where they say, this is where we have the coroner character, who is the guy going, well, technically, the victims have been had a loss of blood, and they have marks on their neck.
The coroner also gives no shits. Like, I will tell the truth.
Well, because he's just
even though I'm being.
These are the facts, sir.
Yeah, he's getting the stink eye from. We have is it the assistant mayor?
Yes.
He's not the mayor.
The deputy mayor, I think it is. Yeah.
Deputy mayor.
We
have
the district
sheriff
attorney,
Butcher,
the
sheriff,
district attorney. Bernie's
and we have
there.
our FBI Bernie represented, and McCurgy, would have been Jeff Rice. Sorry, Jeff.
I love the idea that he just goes, "I'll be this character," who is basically just exposition.
Well, he knew he wasn't going to get the lead, but I
like
was
that he
enough
gives
of
himself not even like a fun character part necessarily. Although I guess he was trying to turn it into one with the accent and stuff. But
it's quite possible. But he also was just like trying to angle in. Yeah. And from what I read, favorably, they said
as somebody who writes stuff and also likes to act a little bit, I know this feeling where I'm like, but that's the part I'll play.
They said it was a very it was a decent audition. They said, and that's why the original producer was like, yeah, sure. But
whatever.
But then it just
Who
didn't happen.
cares? Like it almost feels like, does it really matter who plays
this
character?
Well, they said it's like, well, he's not a member of the guild and whatever, and so Jeff Rice never did get a part in anything other than he worked in theaters the rest of his life. Like he did acting on the stage.
Burned him like nobody's business. No,
his only claims to fame and the novel.
He just go outside his place and be like, Linville.
It was just Kolchak. Like he's written Kolchak graphic novels. He's done other stories.
Oh, I see. There's some audio adventures that are available on Audible.
Yeah, I think it's really just the original books done as audiobooks.
Well, he's still credited.
Well, good for him.
Yeah.
He'll get money from this podcast, right?
Yes.
I think he may not still be alive. I'm not sure. Anyway, but good on him for creating this. So, they do a press conference. So there are other news people there other than Carl.
We did lose him in 2015, unfortunately.
Very sorry. Very sorry. And I owe him a lot because I love Carl Kolchak.
Yeah. Where was I here? Oh, yeah. So he's saying there was a lot of blood. It seems like it's been sucked out of them somehow. There are
he
bite
thinks
marks.
Maybe it was a device.
Yeah. There are bite marks, almost like a dog.
Consistent with a large dog.
And my favorite is just the reporter goes, "Oh, you're telling me a dog killed these women? This is the stupidest shit I'm getting out of here."
Isn't that Sheriff Butcher, actually?
I don't know who it was. It's mixed.
I think it's actually Akins because he's like going, "Are you saying a dog did this?"
I don't think we see who says it, and it's mixed down in the sound.
Yeah,
mix,
it's true.
So it could easily be. I don't know who it is. It's just sort of.
And then he goes, and we found another interesting element in the wounds, and they go, "What is it?" He goes, "Saliva."
Human saliva.
Human saliva. And of course,
vampire.
Like, ding dong, ding dong.
A vampire.
Yeah.
So then everybody loses their minds as soon as he says that. Of course.
Yep.
And then there's.
Meanwhile, I'm at home going, "Woo!"
And Kolchak's like, "See, it's a vampire," and he's like, "Well, not a literal vampire, but correct me if I'm wrong. There are people who are crazy and think themselves as vampires."
Yeah, Kolchak walks a rational line at the beginning. He says, aren't there people that, and the coroner says, you're right, Mr. Kolchak. There have been people throughout history who have, through some mental derangement, he says, have come to believe themselves vampires.
And he says most likely what the situation is you're looking for someone anemic or with some sort of rare blood disorder. That's our profile at the moment.
Right.
And then then they were talking about, and then there was that blood that was stolen. And they reported there was a weird guy poking around. And this is where Claude Akins has his great line where he goes, guy was probably just high on pot.
Oh, God. He said he was probably high on pot or the hard stuff.
Yeah.
And I fucking love the idea that even at this point, 1972, pot's still considered like, man, you smoke a joint, you're probably going to lose your fucking shit.
Yeah.
He's
high on the pot.
A madman.
That's what it is, pot, I tells you.
It's the pot that'll cause you to go steal blood from a hospital.
Mm-hmm. And it is Linville does say, Mr. Kolchak makes some fascinating points that could easily be true.
Yep.
And then they're immediately like, all right. Nobody print the thing about blood loss, though. We don't want to start a panic.
Yeah.
That's a classic thing.
There's this great, I mean, obviously part of the undercurrent of this is the little guy who wants to tell the truth versus the vested interests of government and business. And essentially this is Jaws. This is like the kind of stuff that they ended up putting in Jaws. It's the local government saying, downplay the connection. We don't want to talk about a serial killer, and also downplay this vampire nonsense because we don't want people being frightened. And of course, Kolchak knows it's not about protecting the people from being frightened. It's about business. It's like that's right. Because literally they have.
And he has that line where he's like,
the deputy mayor's like, that's not good for business.
Yeah, business.
And Kolchak's like, oh,
I love the beaches.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When they close the press conference and they walk out of the room, I love the whole thing of the deputy mayor locking arms with Kolchak. Like, let me talk to you for a second, Kolchak. And he locks arms with him. And McGavin does this great thing where he's playing along, but he does look at the arm like, really?
Yeah.
Is this what's happening? I'm being led by the arm by the deputy mayor?
Please don't touch me.
But he's basically like going, yeah, keep. I know how you like to stir shit up, but how about you keep all this quiet? We have a prepared statement. He actually, like the sheriff goes, there's actually a prepared statement from the coroner's office, which means they had already written one that the coroner will not, his stuff about human saliva will not be in it.
This cut is great, though, because it basically cuts from that scene to Vincenzo being like, Kolchak, you can't say vampire. He's written a headline that's like vampire killer stalking Las Vegas ?
Kolchak goes, I didn't say there's a vampire. He goes, the headline of the piece is vampire killer stalks Las Vegas ?
Yeah.
And he goes, the article goes on to explain that this guy may think he's Count Dracula. He's not saying he's really a vampire. I love it. It's so great.
It's so good. And once again, we can't print this shit. They specifically told us not to. We're trying to not induce a panic. And Kolchak's like, yeah, whatever. That's bullshit. Like,
I think this is the scene where we get the greatest line.
Oh, is this it?
I believe this is where.
All right, what is it? I didn't write it down. It didn't hit me the same way.
Carl is not.
I didn't write down many lines, to be fair.
Carl is not having this, okay?
Right.
And he gets, this is where he says, what is this get out game we always play? And then he says, the people have a right to hear the news, the truth.
Yeah.
He goes, this is news. We are a newspaper. It is our responsibility to print the news.
Yeah.
It's that thing.
Yeah, that is good stuff.
The great thing is, like, there's a forward in the book of this night stalking thing.
Somewhere there was a young Aaron Sorkin watching that going,
Well, exactly. But the guy who wrote the forward to that book is this like journalist, and he goes, in his career at some point in the 90s in a newsroom, he heard another reporter saying that verbatim. And he turned around and he said, that's Kolchak. And the other reporter
by
turned around,
God, it was Darren McGavin.
The guy turned around and said, you're the first person that's ever gotten that. I just love the fact that sunk in to reporters, would-be reporters, and writers everywhere.
It is so
it just
perfectly worded and delivered that it is like,
it's just the way he's putting the emphasis of, this is news, and we are a newspaper.
Yeah.
It is our responsibility to print the news.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God.
I think Jeff Daniels says some similar shit on Newsroom, actually, when I made that.
Well, there's
a lot of those kind of monologues on there.
That's the kind of idealism you want in a journalist.
Yeah.
It should be about capital T truth, no matter the effect it would have on the public or the effect it would have
journalism,
on the power.
Movies and shows I've seen really emphasize.
Yeah.
It's like, but these people, they are the ones who are crusading for the right.
It is a heroic job if you're doing it the way it should be done.
Absolutely. So we cut to Kolchak at home with his girlfriend who's laying in bed, and Kolchak is still just like, I just can't get... there's somebody out there killing these ladies. Like, we just get the sense he's got this hot girlfriend who's clearly down to do some stuff in bed there, and he's just like, but this vampire killer, it's a classic scene of him.
Maybe it's a real vampire. I like Carol Lindley a lot, but in everything I've seen her, and Poseidon Adventure is probably the most famous thing she did.
That's what I certainly think of her from.
She was all over the 70s, all over TV, all over movies. Very familiar face, but her delivery, I mean, she's fine, but her delivery is always a little bit like this. She's always a little bit like the character of Janice of the Muppets.
Yeah.
A little bit hippy dippy. It's like, well,
my
Carl.
God, she did a ton of Fantasy Island.
Oh yeah.
But never is the same. 11 episodes, never is the same character.
And I think she did The Love Boat. I mean, it's anything.
Oh yeah,
that was popular TV at the time. She was in multiple episodes, and it's always just kind of like this.
And it's to skip out. No, wait, never mind. There it is. There's one Love Boat.
Only one? That does surprise me.
Only one Love Boat, but
so much Fantasy Island.
So much Fantasy Island. I just love the idea of being on a show 11 times as different characters each time. That is wild. That's a lot. I think
Sonny Bono was in multiple episodes of Fantasy Island.
Sonny Bono did 28. No, I don't know how many he did, but
I remember one where he wanted to become a superhero for his son, to get his son to love him, so that he ended up with actual superpowers.
Classic. So he gets a call that there's another victim, but as he says,
we should say Carl Kolchak does, not Sonny Bono.
No. Sonny Bono enters this picture though, as himself, weirdly. He gets a call that there's been another victim, but as he says in the narration, but this time there's a witness.
He was seen. Yeah.
Now we cut to what you were talking about earlier. There's a traumatized woman crying to the police, giving her statement, and Kolchak just once again wanders in. He's just photographing the body of this murder victim.
Yeah.
And they're just like, oh, hey, Kolchak. The cops are just like, hey, how's it going?
And he goes, so Bela Lugosi struck again. And the cop goes, hey, go easy, Kolchak. That's her mom over there.
Oh, and he immediately is like, uh-oh, yeah, that's not good. He goes up and questions her about what did she see. And she has a whole thing where she's like, I thought they were just kissing. He was her date or something like that. I didn't realize what was happening. Yeah.
And here's my fun trivia. The actress who played the mom?
Yeah.
Who isn't even credited, I think, in this?
I don't see her on the IMDb here.
She was the voice of Mother Bates in Psycho.
Oh, shit.
And Psycho 2 and Psycho 3. She came back to do just the voice of Mother Bates.
Nice. That's
Norman,
pretty...
She's a filthy girl,
That's an
Norman.
iconic voice performance in film history. Wow, that's amazing.
I know.
Wow.
There you go.
Incredible.
Glad I could help.
So talking about his contacts once again, I love this scene with him and the courthouse switchboard operator where he brings a box of chocolate with 2 gift bows on it
to block the label.
Yeah,
it's clearly,
but it still makes it like that's odd. That's very specific.
It's a Whitman sampler, and their box style, the color of the box. Yep. Everyone knows what a Whitman sampler looks like.
They still look like that.
They still look like that. So they put multiple. They put multiple little bows to cover the logo.
Why would he put a bow on it at all?
And this is just what you're saying. Mm-hmm. It's great that you get these character bits. This is a 1.5 minute scene, and we know this relationship. Yeah. It's delightful. she's his go-to, and the way he butters her up
Mm-hmm.
is by calling her sweet and sexy and bringing her chocolates. And she will tell him anything.
And what he wants is, he heard there's a lead from the DMV where they're looking for the license plate of the car of the killer, because the mother saw that, so they have that.
And
info.
also she also describes him, so they know
because
that
it cuts from this scene to a close-up of the newspaper with the drawing of the killer. But it's not Kolchak looking at the newspaper. For the first time here, we are from the perspective of the vampire.
Another great touch.
Great stuff.
And you heard in the Dan Curtis interview where, and it gets mentioned in the book and the Tim Lucas thing, the whole thing was they wanted, because it's Vegas, they had Barry Atwater, who plays Janos Skorzeny,
who is a striking image, no question about it.
He is. I mean, whether or not I have nitpicks about this character, he's a great vampire. But they said, hey, Barry, in costume with the contacts and everything, they said, just walk through this casino for like 45 minutes and see if anyone no one did. No one turned.
Yeah.
And he's in the suit. He's in the black suit. He's like 6'3", skinny, tall. Yeah. He has the deathly pallor and the contacts in, and no one batted an eye. In the scene where he walks through the casino after looking
Vegas,
at his
baby, am I right?
Yeah, exactly. When he looks at that paper and folds it up and walks through, the people looking at him in that scene are clearly actors who were supposed to be like noticing, oh, he looks like the picture on the paper or whatever. But I love the fact
we
that
don't
real
see
people.
The camera's only behind him.
We're just seeing him from the behind. Yeah,
we see he's a big guy though.
Yeah,
and
tall dude in a black suit.
See him stalk a woman out of this place, and this is where we get the dog one, because we get it from his perspective. Which I love the idea that this guy's following her car, and she's like, "Oh, I got a little something for you, pal," and sicks this dog on him, which he just kills instantly.
Yeah, she has. I mean, there is a lot of undercurrent in this where these are women in Las Vegas. So they are all trying to protect themselves, whether or not there had been a vampire anyway. So her thing was, she has this trained German Shepherd sitting in the back of her car.
Yeah.
It was there all day, all night, who knows anyway. But she opens the door like, all right, you're trying to stalk me. My dog is trained to kill you. The dog leaps on the vampire, and then you just hear the vampire snap its neck.
Yeah.
And then he comes toward her.
And this woman just is frozen in terror at this point, because he just
I will say, what's weird about this scene is her performance.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't quite work.
She does. I mean, it is like you would be frozen with fear, but there should be shades of it. Like,
no.
Instead, she's doing this stock weird mannequin pose for the whole thing.
Yeah.
He's not hypnotizing her. Why isn't she screaming?
This vampire does not appear to do that, no.
And, their take on vampires is different from everyone else's and whatever. But he is only out at night, and he gets her. And it's good stuff, man. Good scene.
Kolchak is once again arguing with his editor, insisting that there is indeed a vampire of some sort running around killing people. And they have a right to, they have an obligation to tell people about it.
Some man who thinks he's Count Dracula is killing 4, maybe 5 women.
Yeah, because that's the thing. This woman's missing. This woman from the car. They didn't find her body, but she is missing.
And you know what? That's my embarrassing admission. This is the news, and we are a newspaper scene.
Yep.
Because the 4, maybe 5
that one's easy,
women,
because there's like 4 scenes where he argues.
4
with
scenes
Vincenzo
where he
about,
and Vincenzo have an argument.
Yeah. So it's. But anyway, Kolchak's now been. His contact at the courthouse comes through and gives him the information that the everything was phony on the car ownership, but they did find out where it was sold from, and the police are now questioning this big old cowboy car dealer.
While the cops are questioning him, it's just amazing how Carl is showing up as these things are happening, because it's not like, I understand you talked to the cops earlier. Instead, he shows up while the cops are questioning this dude.
And I do love this guy
in this Camaro.
I do love this guy's thing where he's like, well, he said, do you want to buy this car? He didn't say anything to me. Didn't say anything at all. But I just took one look at him and said, I'm not going to mess around with this guy.
I love the fact that what we're led to believe
red eyes and a white
Janos
skin.
Skorzeny, this vampire guy, is trying to talk this guy down on the price of a used car.
I finally just said, fucking take the car. No.
What if I give you 800 for it? I
just said, I don't want to tango with this fella here.
Yeah, but one look at those eyes, and I was like, not going to mess with them.
So that's the information they get here is this guy was super creepy.
Yep.
And he gave him this car, basically.
And they of course know the make and model and the tag number of this car.
Yeah. So Kolchak is once again obsessing about the case with his girlfriend there, and she's like, "You're gonna get fired again, Carl, just like you did in this city in Chicago and New York and before that," which is where we get the rundown if he's been fired, which you're just like, this adds up from the portrayal of his character we've seen. And then this is when she gives him the book on vampires.
Which I agree with this bit from Tim Lucas's thing, his commentary, where he says, he's like, what is it about these movies, even in a movie where we have someone as ostensibly smart as Carl Kolchak, who even refers to Bela Lugosi and Count Dracula. So that means that this is a world...
We complain about this all the time on here.
It's like, why do people have to have ancient books handed to them to learn the very basic rules of what vampires do, their powers, and how to kill them? Why is it always some book with woodcuts?
Yeah.
And why does Gale have this?
Yeah, here's this book about vampires. You can borrow it.
It literally could have just been him going, well, based on the movies I've seen, this is what you do.
It's a 75-minute movie, and Kolchak has to spend 5 of it being like, wooden stakes and sunlight, you say. Yeah, and just like crosses.
Apparently,
they don't like
crucifix.
Crosses. That's
they don't like crosses.
Yeah. Meanwhile, cut to a more exciting scene, which is this nurse is walking down the hallway of a hospital, and we see our vampire very casually, just very matter-of-fact and business-like, is stealing blood from this refrigerator in this hospital. I love this because
this is really dumb, but I love it because of what you just described. It is done as sort of like he snuck into the hospital. Now, apparently, he had done the other hospital. He had dressed up as an orderly. They say he was an orderly.
Here, he's just in a suit and tie.
Here, he's in his black suit.
Yeah, that's
not at all conspicuous.
I'll tell you why I like this though, because this tells me this guy's like, who the fuck's gonna stop me?
I know.
Come and get me, assholes! Like, I'm a vampire, baby.
And he's pulling out bottles of stored blood, and he is, as you say, he's like looking at them like, oh, positive. I love this.
It's a good
year. Is this AB?
Yeah.
AB negative?
Yeah.
Ooh, and he's stocking up a bag.
That's the good stuff. Yeah, and he's just putting it in his little leather bag and just going.
The nurse screams, which brings a male orderly in.
Look at one and go, oh, no. Put it
I would have loved to see him put one back for some reason.
Yeah.
And people would have been talking about that for years. Why did he put that one back?
Yeah. Ugh, no.
Which this leads to a physical altercation where he
just starts wrecking people in this hospital.
He's throwing this dude. Now, of course, his stunt double is throwing this dude, the male orderly, throwing him into walls, bashing him back and forth, and then eventually tosses him out the motherfucking window.
Which is one of the most exciting things that can happen on 70s TV, is to see a guy go out a window. And it is a good window toss. It's a great window toss. And I love it. I'm just
if you watch it closely,
out that window.
If you watch it closely, you do see the bag. You do see the corner of the bag bounce up in the corner of the screen.
Well.
It's not too jarring because it is still a great stunt.
It's certainly much clearer in the 4K restoration that you and I watched.
Yes, it is.
Which is beautiful, but often does expose things like, oh, that's a stunt double, or there's a wire
and
there.
makeup-y kind of stuff, and but this is a commercial break, and when they cut back from it, it's a surprisingly, like, they have that body on the ground, busted up. They have glass all around. There's not a massive amount of blood, but I still respected them for like, ooh, that looks
also,
like a body that has been tossed out a window.
The thing that I love is Kolchak rolls up, and the guy hasn't left. He's just rampaging through cops now. It's great. How fast does Kolchak get there, though? Is that the question? Kolchak gets there instantly.
It's just like,
how long have these cops been fighting this guy then? Like,
that is the question, because in his voiceover he says
grappling. Like,
he says he got the police squawk box.
Yeah,
he's listening to police radio. He has to have been within a block.
Yeah,
because there's no way Janis Skorzeny was fighting for 15 minutes.
Especially the way he's just tossing cops. And then they roll up on their motorcycles, and he just bashes through those.
According to this movie, an entire squad of cops is just showing up and
Yeah.
getting their asses handed to them by this tall
Love
dude
it.
in a
Love
black
this scene.
suit. And Kolchak, he rolls up.
And he's
while
just
it's all
snapping
going
away
down.
as this is happening.
I do appreciate the fact at no point is he trying to engage.
No.
He is a reporter. So
not till the
he's
very
letting the
end
cops
when he kind of has
shoot.
no choice does he do that.
Right.
Yeah.
The cops are shooting, and Kolchak is just snapping pics.
And this guy's just taking bullets, baby.
He's taking bullets, and he like swats a motorcycle cop. I mean, and the guy
I love
goes
that.
crashing.
It's like two motorcycle cops, and they go
Yes.
crashing on either side of him. And you're just like,
And-
nothing will contain this man.
And the nice elderly British man who directed this thing goes, "Oh, there were some wonderful stunts in this." He goes, and they all went perfectly well, except for there was one in the hospital scene when the motorcycle went astray. He goes, "It very nearly hit me. That was the only one where
I had a small fright when
he
the
was
motorcycle
standing-
came my way."
But you see it in the take because you see the bike. It hits this kind of guardrail thing and then spins in a different direction. He goes, "Yes, if it hadn't been for the guardrail, I probably would have been killed by that motorcycle."
Well, yes. The hazards of the job, if you will. Yes.
Oh, it's so
He's
good.
so
Anyway.
old, this guy too, in the interview too. He's just
Well,
like,
but him
yes.
and the composer, they were in their 90s when they got interviewed.
Yes. So yeah, he rampages and gets away.
Yeah, he runs off.
Cut to another press conference. Now they have the FBI has ID'd this killer.
I love this scene so much.
I love this scene too because what I love is when you talk about the idea that these vampires are immortal, they don't make this guy from the 1700s though.
No, they make him old, but still within the
he could still be
realm
alive, but
of-
it makes no sense that he would be strong and powerful. He'd
yeah,
be like
they're sitting
80.
there going. They're saying you're saying a man in his 70s
Yeah.
was able to tackle an entire police squad. Because and I appreciate that. This is a vampire who basically was turned somewhere like in World War I, probably.
Right.
But yes,
say he
they
was
ID him.
Born in the late 1890s.
1890s.
Yeah. And they're talking about he had a secret identity, which I love, as a hematologist.
Yep.
And pretty much wherever he went, strange murders followed.
Yeah, they give his background, and it seems as if this is smart. Anytime a war broke out, he went to that place because it would just be blood heaven.
Yeah.
But in everywhere he went, in addition to there being a revolution or war, there was also strange killings that popped up around the same time.
Nobody looked into that though.
And then he ended up in Canada as a doctor.
Right.
And got chased out of Canada because they did start to connect him to some mysterious deaths.
And he was storing lots of blood. He was a hematologist, but still he was storing an unusual amount of blood.
And they said he had meat locker.
Yeah.
So Janos Skorzeny is the name, or Janos Skorzeny is the name of our vampire.
Yeah, exactly. But Kolchak's like, yes, that's all great. That does not explain how I saw this guy take like 30 bullets last night.
I love it. He's just sticking it to him. He goes, I was there, okay? Yeah. And he goes, there's two possibilities. One, either this guy really is a vampire that can take 30 bullets, or the entire police force is blind.
Yeah.
And the sheriff almost throttles him. He's like, well, you bastard.
Because he goes, the only way you're going to solve this is to proceed as if he is a vampire.
Really
that has
vampire.
to be the working theory now. And they're just like, God damn it, Kolchak, Jesus Christ.
He also says, I saw that guy shot. He goes, and what was coming out of him was clear.
Yeah.
Was not blood.
Which you see later when Kolchak fires at him, there's just like dust coming off of him.
I love that simply because it's an acknowledgement of Icor.
Mm-hmm.
Few vampire movies go that far into it, but they don't have blood in their veins. If you stake him in the heart, whatever blood they drank is in there.
Right.
But what's running through their veins is Icor, which is what the blood turns into, and it is a clear liquid.
Here it's almost a dust though when he gets shot.
Well, when he gets shot, but you see the cut like in the scene with the pool coming up.
You do have
and
that.
there's clear liquid coming down from his wound.
Yeah.
And they have Kolchak saying he saw a clear liquid instead
It's
of
almost
blood.
like when he's getting shot, that's like the skin almost that's dust when it gets impacted. It's so old, and because even the way like the skin is flaking on his head and stuff like that is just like.
I do think the makeup for this TV movie is well done.
Well, it's something I often talk about, which is sometimes the simplest makeup is most effective. They don't overdo it. It's not heavy on prosthetics. It's a very simple but very creepy design.
I think one thing that I appreciated was,
and I think the guy's face is creepy in general. I mean,
yes,
no offense, but they have a good canvas to work on, is what I'll say.
Yes, and his hair. Well, he played a Vulcan in a Star Trek episode.
Oh yes.
So in other words, he has that kind of look.
Yeah. He has an exotic, like implaceable kind of foreign look.
Yes.
Who could forget his performance as Surak on Star Trek?
Don't ever. It's very important.
I would never, sir.
It's him with Abraham Lincoln.
Oh yeah, it's one of the stranger episodes for sure.
Yes.
That I remember watching as a kid. Just that scene when they're looking at the view screen and suddenly Abraham Lincoln's in space. And even as a kid, I'm going, "Oh, what are you doing, Star Trek? What is this shit?"
It's aliens doing a gozer where it's like, pick the form of your hero, and it's like, all right. Here's your champion, Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
We pulled him out of your Earthling mind, and we pulled out of Spock's Vulcan mind, Surak. There he is.
Yeah.
God, I love that.
Great
it is
stuff.
So cool.
Very weird.
But anyway, so Barry Atwater, he's very good. And one thing I said was they paid attention to, I hate when vampire movies do like a good dead face, and they neglect the neck or the hands or whatever, and so they look normal.
Right.
In this one, they do. They go all the way down. Yeah. And when he's strangling Kolchak, those are dead hands.
Even though we don't see it, they were that committed to the makeup.
There was dead junk.
Yeah.
They totally deadened that junk.
Barry Atwater was like, must we put prosthetics on my penis? Yes, they said. It'll get you into character. And years later, he admitted it did get him into character. It was the right call.
I was nervous at the time, and then I realized it was best for the part. Anyway, so
I was at that point.
This press conference is great because Bernie is telling them this is who we're looking at, and they're going, "That's not possible. You can't have a 70-year-old doing that." And Carl says, "Are you ready to hear me talk about vampires yet?"
And the answer is no, not yet. That will come later.
That will come a bit later.
Instead, we meet yet another of Kolchak's contacts in the world, the great Elijah Cook.
Unbelievable. Elijah Cook Jr. Elisha Cook Jr.
Oh, yeah.
And basically Dan Curtis in his interview was like going, I just wanted Elisha Cook Jr. He goes, Maltese Falcon. Yeah. I just wanted him in there. I'm like,
Which, I mean, look, this guy was in the Maltese Falcon, the Big Sleep, and the Killing, which are three of the best film noirs ever made. And then even though fucking in Rosemary's Baby.
In his later years, it was mainly he played a lot of like kooky little dudes, but
which I would say this performance is still here. But it's a good.
Definitely,
it's a solid kooky little dude.
It's fine. He has like maybe 8 lines in the whole movie.
Yeah,
but
he's got
the
2
thing
scenes.
Is, if you see him in those movies that you just mentioned, he's amazing.
Yep.
And there's like you're constantly waiting for him, and in Maltese Falcon, you're constantly waiting for him to just pull his gun and do it. He's the guy that has the shortest fuse in that thing.
He's so good in that.
So good.
Just standing next to Sidney Greenstreet. Fuck yeah, man.
Yeah.
All day, man.
He's like, no, Wilmer. He's like, I like you. I like a man who likes to talk. Oh my God, Sidney Greenstreet. Anyway,
Maltese Falcon is just a perfect film. Let's be.
Different podcast where we talk about Maltese Falcon all day.
All day, man. I mean, look, I have come close to doing a noir podcast. Sure. Of course I
would join you.
Of course I would join you. Maybe the monster segues to noir at some point. I don't know. Jesus. I don't know. I'm just saying stuff. Yeah. So anyway.
Just talking to hear myself talk.
So he's this. I guess we're to take compulsive gambler that Kolchak knows, and he's just like, hey, you're in the casino. What's his name? Sidney. Mickey.
Mickey.
Yeah, and he goes, and he's just like, you're going to be in the casino for the rest of your life anyway. You mind showing this picture around and see if anyone's seen this guy? He's like, sure.
This is like he I think he's like an all-purpose informant who just like he's the eyes of the
he's
lower
just
levels.
A Vegas regular.
Right.
Yeah.
And they have the stupid little comedy exchange where it's like he goes, yeah, could you get on that as fast as you can? He goes, oh, I will, just as soon as I lose my last dollar. He's at like one of the tables. And he goes, Mickey, did you ever once think about maybe winning? And then Mickey looks at him like, winning? Like it had never occurred to him that he might win.
Yeah, that's a little jokey for my taste.
It's a little jokey. It is.
Yeah, that's a little bit like
but it's Elijah Cook Jr. and I'll take it.
I mean, he's great, and he and McGavin are great, obviously.
And he gets a great little scene later.
Yeah, and then we do have a scene where he's talking, and this is a great Kolchak exchange when he goes, "I've seen a lot of crazy things in my job, but I have never seen anything like this." And he goes, "I don't know what this is. I don't know if I believe in vampires. All I know is I've never seen anything like this." And he's about to see even more because over the police scanner, he hears, "They've found the guy. He's been spotted." And once again, he is right in the middle of this action.
I am convinced possibly that Kolchak has the magical power of teleportation.
I think he does.
Because he is unbelievably fast.
He's got a Nightcrawler-esque bamfing ability that
he
just
bamps
bamp
all day and all night.
Because
he shows up while the cops are literally chasing Skorzeny through a neighborhood, like through a suburban backyard neighborhood.
Into eventually this main conflict happens around this pool in somebody's backyard.
Yep.
This is quite the throwdown between him and like 6 cops.
And he is tossing cops all day.
Tossing cops
and
all day.
And they are shooting him all day.
And then he eventually like grapples with one into the pool and they're fighting underwater. And Kolchak's just snapping away with that camera.
He's like,
"Oh, this is great stuff. Good job, boys. You're giving me all the pictures."
I can only
He's
assume
so
that
close to the action. I do think it's interesting that Skorzeny never once turns on Kolchak in this whole thing.
Right.
He's focused on the cops.
And also,
Kolchak appears totally unfazed or afraid about any of this. He's just like, "Oh, yeah, that's it. That's the framing.
I am curious. We never see any of these photos, so I'm curious, like, does Skorzeny show up on film?
Doesn't he show the photos to the council later? I thought he has them, like, in his briefcase. We don't really make a point of it, but I think he is showing...
You're right.
Like, because I think that
they obviously never get printed in the paper.
No. But I think he is going, like, look at what happened, because I think this is the time when he goes, "Are you listening to me now? Look at him toss that cop." We don't see the photos, but he has like a envelope of them here. So I think he does show up on film clearly.
Yeah.
Because I thought the same thing when he first takes a picture of him. I'm like, is that just going to be nothing? No, that's not a thing in this.
Right.
Because that too would be evidence of vampirism. He could have also shown the photos here and been like, the guy's not even in the picture. But no. They don't have time for that.
Well, that's something that
minutes.
we're almost to the part where Tim Lucas loses his mind, and I'll bring that up.
You can hear audio engineers being like, "Mr. Lucas, you have to calm down." No.
So once again, Kolchak has gotten very close to Janos Skorzeny, and he sees proof.
We distinctly see them just light him up as he runs out of here. They're just blasting away. I mean, Jenks is there at this point, and he's got a shotgun on him, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He puts a couple of blasts in his back. Nothing.
So now, there's another. Do we jump to the meeting now?
Yeah, it's not officially a press conference. They're meeting, and Kolchak is just there, and they're like, "Oh, Kolchak, how'd you get in here?" And I love the way Kolchak is sitting with his legs across like 3 chairs, and just being like,
"Yes,
oh, you fellas gonna listen to me now?"
So basically, it's like a closed room meeting, and FBI and cops and the deputy mayor, all the same guys, except for the coroner's.
I love that the actual mayor can't be bothered to be involved.
I know, just deputy mayor.
The deputy,
But they're sitting there going, "Jesus Christ, man, why couldn't you bring him down?" It's like, well, my men said they shot him many times. Yeah. And then you just hear Kolchak's voice in the back of the room.
Into him,
and Kolchak's is like, are you ready to listen now?
Yeah.
And then he just turn around, and Kolchak's got his feet up on the desk, and his hat's over his eyes.
I love it.
And then he just tips the hat back, and he's like going, are you ready to listen? And then he's like, and they're like, okay, Kolchak, maybe so.
And
what do you suggest?
He's got this leather bag, and he goes, drops on the table. Here's what you're gonna do.
Oh, I fucking love it.
You're gonna issue all your men
in the every man in the field
and he
is to be issued one of these.
It's a crucifix. Oh yeah, and these, and he busts out a wooden stake. And this is my favorite: is when he's like, "Where did you get that?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I got a friend of mine who makes furniture."
Yeah, a friend of mine runs a furniture shop. Yeah. I had him. I woke him up and had him make some of these.
I just love that. Like, that's one of those details I love. Where like that doesn't need to be in there, but I love that exchange.
No,
where
I love that. It's because it's so much better than the Yorga thing of we'll find some sticks and tie them together.
No, I know a guy who has a bunch of wood lying around. I had him sand
and it
this
explains
down.
how a fucking reporter would end up with a.
But so many of these things would
steak.
either do the Yorga thing or just be like, he's got a steak.
Yeah,
they just put that in, and it just further adds to the world of Kolchak.
All these actors are doing great work in the scene because, of course, Kolchak is being so smarmy, like, I got you, motherfuckers, and you're forced to listen to me now. And he's the cat who's got the canary, but they are looking at him both like, I can't believe it's come to this, and
what choice do we have?
And they're also looking at him as if he's insane. It's a combo of all of those. It's like,
it's great.
I guess
it's a great scene, and he is going.
Well, he does try to work out the bargain. He does the Faustian bargain. They say, "What should we do?" And he goes, "I'll tell you what you should do." With one,
I get the exclusive story on this.
I get the exclusive story on this, and they go, "All right, Kolchak. But if it turns out that you're right, and he's a vampire, then you will get the exclusive story.
But if he isn't, then you got to get the fuck out of Vegas, man.
You got to get the fuck out of town.
Yeah.
And you'll print nothing about this at all.
And he's like, been there before. Sounds good.
Kolchak is.
He also does say here, and this is key to the ending of it, when he says, also what you're going to want to do, you're going to want to head over and attack him during the daytime. Then you can get the stake in him. And they're like, whoa, we'll give the guys the stake and the crucifixes. But we're going to try to arrest this guy, all right? But we can't just murder someone.
Yeah, that's
and I do love this because McGavin's just
we'll do that, but we're bringing him in by the book.
And Gavin's
because
just like,
otherwise that's premeditated murder.
Yeah, and McGavin's his performance is just like, I thought we settled this. They arrested. What are you talking about?
I do love the fact that Kolchak doesn't take his own advice though.
No. Well, because the next scene is he leaves this meeting with a hop in his step, like, whoo, boy, this is going to be the one that takes me back to the top,
He's
baby.
On top of the world. He's like going, watch out, New York. Kolchak's coming back.
Which is great. And I mean, there is something about the raggedy, older-looking McGavin about that that's just like, dude, they're not going to take you back. You're too old. It's been too long. Like, but you love him.
Matter.
You love him still the same, and you're happy for him here.
You're happy for him in this moment.
I mean, eventually you'll become, but after this, you're just like, oh, they're going to fuck him on this, though, aren't they?
Most viewers of that period, this is the beginning. I mean, like the Watergate thing, this is the beginning where people are just getting used to downer endings of movies and TV shows.
Yeah.
This is where
I think the 70s
you cannot
might have
trust
gone a little
ending.
too hard at that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Everything needed a downer ending, whether or not it was warranted. Some of them are just like, yeah, I mean, that movie could have ended all right, and it would have been just fine. But no, okay, they shot him. They shot him, everybody, so don't worry about it.
Yep.
We did one of those on the action shelf where it's just a stupid blaxploitation revenge movie, and then for no reason, the character is just murdered after getting his revenge, and we're just like, that came out of nowhere. He just gets shot in the movie end.
There are movies where, I mean, obviously it works a lot, but sometimes it's just beating up. I mean, when you watch things like Blowout, and you just get to that ending and you're just like, oh God, man. It works. It's devastating, but you're like, why?
Yeah.
Why did she have to die? Why did he get there like a moment too late?
Yeah. That's just like, what if? It is almost just like, fuck you, audience. Come on. Some of them felt like that. Some of them really work and are like,
no.
I mean, because
I like Blowout works.
Blowout's a good movie.
You're like, oh man.
Yeah. Great stuff, guys. Anyway, somebody want to get
Hollywood.
some pizza as your way out of the theater? You want to go get some food? I can go for a burrito.
Here's something that's just gonna cheer me up.
Yeah. So anyway, waiting in his car just to give him a little scare.
It is a dumb jump scare.
Yeah. Is our pal Mickey again, and he goes,
Elisha
hey,
Jr.
I sorry to scare you there, Kolchak, but
he goes, what were you doing in my car? He goes, well, you were taking too long, so I climbed in your car and took a nap. He's like,
yeah,
Jesus Christ, Mickey.
Yeah. Anyway,
and
I
Mickey
found out where the guy you're looking for lives. I know
found
the
out where
house.
he lives. Yeah.
And so Kolchak, for some reason, he's like, I gotta beat the cops there. And that's why, I guess that's the reason in the script why he goes at night, is so he can beat the cops there?
I guess so. I am still confused to this day how, okay, Mickey discovers it.
Mm-hmm.
How do the cops and Bernie know?
Doesn't he say that he says it in his narration.
The cops must have figured it out?
No, he says in his narration, I think he tells Mickey to give me 15 minutes or something like that before he tells the police. So Mickey is also going to tell the cops. But first he tells Kolchak. And so that's where Kolchak has to beat them because he wants the pictures and whatever. And I don't know. Yeah. It's a bad idea, though.
True.
Well, and actually,
it isn't.
Maybe it's not a bad idea, though, because you assume he's out hunting. So maybe he isn't home.
It's a gamble.
It is a gamble.
That for a little bit is working.
Mm-hmm. So Kolchak goes into this house. He's poking around.
It's an old,
creepy,
abandoned kind of house.
Classic. He opens up. He's poking around the house. He goes into the kitchen, opens the fridge, stocked with blood. Check.
Bottles of blood in the fridge.
What I love, though, is he opens a drawer and it's full of disguises, like fake mustaches and stuff.
I like that, too.
Only because there's just a dropped line earlier where somebody goes, well, he had a mustache.
Well, but it also makes sense. I like the idea that I mean, Janos Skorzeny has been vampiring
But I'm saying, we never see him put on a mustache, but we hear earlier. And you're like, oh, yeah, right. They said he had a mustache.
And it would make sense. He just knows that, like, okay, look, if I'm going to stalk a place long enough, I should probably have a few disguises because the cops are idiots that I can throw through glass windows. But it'd probably be easier if I keep them off my scent for a long time.
Right, and you keep the thing where it's like, well, that guy had a mustache, but then they say this guy didn't have a mustache.
Yeah, this guy was blonde.
Yeah.
I don't know. Could have been a wig.
So then he eventually finds Janos's coffin, which has dirt in it, very proper to vampire lore, like that. Because sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's just a coffin, and it's like, no.
I think it's hilarious, and for being such a vampire purist, I'm always like, why does it always have to be a fucking coffin? I mean, coffins are very conspicuous. If you just had a crate in your basement, I mean, the vampire is not vain to sit there going, I need velvet. It has to look nice.
Also, let me say this. Can you just sleep on some dirt even? Do you even need anything?
If you are, say, for instance, if you're in the basement and there's no light that comes in, you could just sleep on a fucking bed of dirt down there with no
I don't know.
Coffin around
the coffin is just the iconography. It's just the aesthetic.
Yeah, it's just
we
the
gotta
aesthetic.
keep up
I'm
the
a
looks.
dead person. I sleep in a coffin.
Yeah, it just adds up.
I say blah a lot.
Yeah.
Blah.
So Kolchak discovers the girl who was taken, tied up on a bed with tape over her mouth.
That's a scene for especially 1972 TV. I'm like, holy shit.
And he does
because he walks in and she's being kept as a blood bank.
As he says, his own personal blood bank in the narration.
She's tied to the posts on the bed.
Yeah.
She's got tubes coming out where
she's fully dressed. That makes it TV. Not even like disheveled dressed.
She's got tape over her mouth.
Yeah.
She's alive. She's very pale. So basically, what he's doing with her is he's sending the cold blood into her body, and it warms itself in her body, and then he drains her. So it's like a way to warm up.
It's such a
cool
blood. And disturbing vampire idea.
Yeah,
very creative.
It plays here because he takes the tape off her mouth, and she's like babbling, like, oh, blah, blah. He's like, I'll get you out of here. Don't worry, blah, blah, blah. And then he hears the car pull up.
Yeah. And he's
he has to slap the tape back on her mouth.
And he does say,
sorry, babe.
And he goes, this won't stick, so you got to stay still.
Yeah.
That's the, and so, yes, I almost said Columbo. Kolchak hides in the closet, and Janos comes back. We see him hooking up one of his bottles of blood.
Yep.
But he gets the distinct sense that something is amiss.
Yeah, he knows someone's here.
And he goes out into the hallway and he kind of looks around, and Kolchak comes out briefly, but then when Janos comes back in, he's back in the closet. But this time he just whips open the closet and grabs Kolchak. But
physical altercation.
Kolchak's got the crucifix. Yeah, back.
Yep. Yeah.
And he's keeping him back, and he's keeping him back, but then he slips on some stuff and falls.
Yes.
And now the vampire is leaps right on him.
Well, this is really a rundown place. Like the people have probably squatted
it's
here, so there's like broken glass and garbage all over the place.
Backing up because he's trying to keep him away with the crucifix, and he slips on some like loose boards and goes crashing down to the first floor.
And then Skorzeny's on him.
Oh, Skorzeny leaps about him, and he's about to bite his neck.
Fuck out of him.
When our old pal Bernie shows up and grabs him.
Bernie comes in.
Yeah, he grabs him and it's Janos' turn to be thrown across the room.
Yeah, he pulls Janos off, and then he shoots at him. Like, he's got a gun. So Bernie hasn't fully bought into the vampire thing either.
Right. Where is this here? Yeah, he shoots him multiple times, but then actually he doesn't shoot him here because he gets when he does this, his gun we see his gun fall. We see his gun fall because then Kolchak grabs his gun and puts a couple rounds into this guy. I mean, point blank hits. I mean, Kolchak's a good shot. He puts like 4 rounds right into his heart, or where his heart would be. I will say
that Kolchak knows he is a supernatural being, but it makes sense that in the moment, if there's a gun there, he's going to be like, well, maybe I'll have better luck than the cops.
Can do something.
Maybe it'll.
I just like seeing Kolchak shoot a gun. It's just cool. He gets a little action hero moment here.
Yep.
But yes, of course it does. Nothing. No effect. And so he's coming at him when I guess it was just the break of day when Kolchak went there, because Kolchak rips this drape off of the window and it's bright sunlight outside, and all of a sudden Skorzeny's like, ah, in classic vampire fashion.
It's actually very similar to Fright Night because the curtain's over a window at the top of the staircase, which is exactly the same as in Fright Night.
Yeah.
So they pull the one from the staircase, which Skorzeny's like, and backs away.
And then I like Bernie coming in. Bernie comes in and closes the door in the room, so now he's trapped in here with it. Yeah. And then Kolchak's got the crucifix as well, and so he's like, they've got him contained.
He's trapped right there on the stairs.
I like that.
He can't move, and then Kolchak stakes him. And I will say
this son of a bitch good.
He does. And I gotta say, I don't know if it was Barry Atwater's actual voice here or they did the sound mix on this. This is one of the best vampire noises of being staked.
Great stuff.
Because it's almost like a baby cry, and he looks angry, yes, but he also looks pathetic, and it's satisfying. We're not seeing gouts of blood. In fact, very little blood in this at all. But this is one of the best vampire stakings you're ever going to get.
It's great. McGavin sells
and then
it.
As he's got the...
By the way, I am partial to a mallet involved in a staking.
Me too.
The just hand staking, that's not enough. I like the driving of it.
Pro mallet. I'm pro mallet.
Absolutely.
Hashtag pro mallet.
Yes.
Are you team mallet?
Yeah.
Let us know.
Yeah. I mean, look, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, very cool. But she was always just like, and we're done. I like
she was just...
But that was a different kind. That was combat in martial arts.
And she had super strength.
She had powers, so it made sense. Yeah, it worked.
Okay.
It worked. Yeah.
But,
we've settled that. So, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, great.
Got no problem.
Yeah.
So Kolchak's got that mallet back when the cops break in.
Yeah, and
including the sheriff.
Hey, boys!
And it's this great thing it's this great freeze frame because he's just like, he's looking at them like, I know what this looks like.
Yeah.
And Bernie's also caught too, and he's like going, yeah, we're killing this man.
Yeah. But he's
oh my God.
No man.
And I should say this right now, because we haven't brought it up. This entire sequence of Kolchak coming to the house, to the staking, no dialogue, and very little score. Like there's the little, like the little echoing little beats.
Yeah.
It is almost entirely silent for 7 minutes.
Yeah.
This is another thing where you're like going, this you don't see in a TV movie. You also don't see this in a lot of movies. It's just you are in his
unnerving,
shoes.
Though. It's unnerving.
Yes, because every time he's making a creak, you're like, oh God.
The absence of score is quite, because I've heard people talk about this, like film theory. Score is comforting even if it's scary, because it lets you know this is supposed to be scary. This is like anything could happen. The score is telling me nothing because there is none.
It is just such a good and interesting choice, and you don't get bored in this sequence. You're like, holy shit. And then when you see that car drive up, you're like, holy shit.
Right. It's great.
I love it. All right.
So we cut to a very happy Kolchak typing up his story.
Yep.
This is going to be the big one that brings him back.
Yep. And he's very happy. Gail's there. She's like, oh, this is awesome. And he yanks the paper out of the typewriter. He's like going, hey, baby, get ready for New York. You're coming with me. And she's like, what? He's like going, we're going to get married. And she's like, well, okay.
You'll marry me? Well, that's great. And
but I'm a whore.
Yeah, I don't.
And then she just looks down the camera and goes, a whore.
I have sex in exchange for money. It's a thing.
This movie was startling for 1972.
Yeah. Also, just on the nose, in my opinion, though.
No, she does not say.
No, she doesn't. So he turns in his story. Well, we see Vincenzo finish reading his story. He's like, "Oh, this is something. This is some article."
Yeah, he goes, "You're going to run that on the front page," and he goes, "Yeah, we sure will." He goes, "This is going to be the big one. I would up the count on how many you print up." He's like, "Yeah, we'll do that." Yeah.
And then as he's leaving, he's like, "Kolchak, you're one hell of a reporter."
This is what is. Oh God damn, do I love this scene?
It's so
here's
well
the
played.
thing.
It's so well played.
It's so well played. Kolchak is on a high.
Yeah.
And he's not picking up on the body language. Vincenzo,
no, we as an audience are going like, why isn't he over the moon about this? He seems happy, but he's saying
absolutely. He's like, this is a great story. Yeah. And he now, of course, believes it's all true.
Right.
At the same time, something has happened to Vincenzo. And he's just telling Carl what he wants to hear. And then he's just like, hey, Carl, like he's defeated. He's like, you're one hell of a reporter. And you're like, uh-oh, what's happened? Oh, God
He's too good a reporter. It's like McNulty on The Wire when he's too good of a detective, you know?
Too good of a detective.
Yeah. So, yeah, he says...
He would have made a very good Kolchak in his early days.
Yeah. That would have been better than Stuart Townsend.
Oh, my God.
He would have been a good choice.
Oh my God! Because we've seen him be
in his younger days. Wouldn't he be about the right age now, Dominic West?
No, he's a little too old. I have watched at least one episode of the Quest. Is it the Search for Love? The Quest for Love?
Oh, Pursuit of Love.
Which is on Prime.
Pursuit of Love.
Pursuit of Love.
Yeah.
Which is very well done.
I have not watched
so
it yet,
surprised
but I've
to
heard
see that Emily Mortimer wrote it based on a novel. She wrote
what
it.
A talented woman.
Is in it. Yeah. Not a main part, but she's so good in it. Everyone's good in it. But Dominic West, I was so happy to see him back.
I love
him,
and
he's great.
Did you watch the Hour, the BBC show he did?
No, I haven't seen that.
Oh, watch it. It's about British television reporters in like the late 50s, early 60s. And he's
how about you get off my back?
He's the BBC News anchorman, and he's great in it.
If you give me one more to watch.
51, Dominic West, I think now would actually be maybe the perfect time for him to be Kolchak.
I see Kolchak as actually being younger than Darren McGavin's playing him. I mean, than Darren McGavin is physically. So, in other words, I would see Kolchak as being in his 40s. But just in this movie,
looks pretty good. He could pass for a 45.
I'm saying
I want him to be Kolchak.
I would love him to be Kolchak. He's a great choice because we've seen him be
I think it'd have to be like right now.
Slightly shady, but noble, heroic guy.
Yeah.
I mean, McNulty,
the jump from McNulty to Kolchak is
Kolchak is very, very
I mean, that's
close.
why I just love the character of Jimmy McNulty.
And
for similar
when
reasons.
he turns on the charm.
Yep.
Okay. All right, you've sold me.
Another guy, though, like we often talk about, why didn't that guy just become the biggest leading man?
I do not know. I do not know.
So why is he is he the villainous second banana in 300? You know, like
should not be the case.
No, he's so good. He's so good.
But don't worry, we have now cast him as our new generation's Kolchak.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
So he gets called into a meeting with the council of the law enforcement leaders and stuff like that.
What's amazing is we've seen the same room and these same people in this same room like 3 or 4 times in this TV movie, and it never has gotten old.
No, it
because
really
each one of these scenes
same thing with the Vincenzo arguments. They keep doing them, but they keep working.
But they also build.
Yes.
They're a different scene with a familiar background.
And
it's
so
great.
He comes in and they're like, "You're under arrest, Kolchak," And he's
and
like,
he goes, "What? This is a joke."
Yeah, I don't think so. And they're like, no, for murder one.
Yeah.
You just fucking
like,
staked the man in the heart. You can't
We
do that.
saw you. You had witnesses. You killed a man.
And he's like, come on. And he's like, Bernie, come on. You got it. And they're like, no.
We had a deal.
Yeah.
And they're like, no.
Yeah.
We didn't see anything to prove what you were saying. Yeah. We saw you kill a man.
Yeah. Didn't even question him. Didn't even give us a chance. You just murdered him.
And here's another great performance here by Ralph Meeker, because this is not the Bernie we've seen in the previous scenes.
Deflated, defeated, yeah.
He's defeated. His coat's off. His tie's askew.
You get the sense like this guy argued intensely prior to this.
He's been browbeaten.
Yeah.
And he's like looking down all the time because he's ashamed to look Carl in the eye and say, yeah, man.
Actually, in this case, Bernie is more the Skinner of this. In this moment, because it is him having to be like, I'm sorry, Mulder, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like, the X-Files.
I tried, and they are too powerful. Mm-hmm. So essentially, they say we're going to throw you in jail if you, and then they say if you persist in spreading that story, it's not going to be printed. And they also say, look, here's the thing: the only way you're going to be free is if you leave town tonight.
And I love they've already packed his bags for him.
Even more devastating,
they
have sent Gale. It has only taken him maybe 2 hours to go to the newspaper, and then
this is a low blow on their part.
It's so low.
Unnecessary.
Paid her way somewhere. They won't even tell him where.
I mean,
and he's
that's just shitty for no reason to him.
Unbelievable. And they say she was an undesirable element, and we don't want undesirable elements in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
So everything, they basically say everything that you love is gone. Mm-hmm. And if you try to keep working at the paper and spread the vampire story, you're going to jail. So they bring in his bags. They've already packed his bags and his typewriter, and they're like, bye, Carl.
Yeah.
Holy fuck.
And
this is the downer ending of all downer endings.
Driving out of town, where we had started with him driving into town.
Yep. And we hear his wrap-up monologue from his book. We cut back to him in the hotel room, which is somewhere. He tried to find
Gale, but never found anything.
He posted ads in the personals columns in newspapers all around the country, which I thought is a very period thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, now
try to contact Carl.
Now this couldn't happen because you'd have a number for her, you know.
Well, also I gotta say, if she really did, I'm like, this is kind of weird. If she really did care for him and love him, she would find him somewhere.
Right. Yeah, it works more in broad strokes than if you really start to drill into it.
Yes, it works for an impact, and it's got an impact where you're like, holy shit.
And once again, McGavin really is selling it.
Robbed him of all his pride and his hopes and his integrity. Not his integrity. He leaves with that.
But he also does say all the vampire and all of his victims were all suddenly cremated.
Yeah. He basically wraps up his book by saying, well, maybe you don't believe this story. Maybe you think I am insane. Maybe you believe what the people of Las Vegas were told, that there was no such murders and it was all the work of different people, whatever. He goes, but ask yourself this. Why did they cremate the man and all of his victims?
Yeah.
And he goes, and maybe you'll sleep better tonight, because he says, I haven't had a good night's sleep since.
Yeah. So when you telling yourself, and his last thing is like, when you're in your bed and you're laying there thinking, just tell yourself, it couldn't happen here.
It couldn't happen here.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, he's been listening back to his own tapes, and he's been following in his manuscript, and then he just dejectedly, with a sardonic laugh, tosses the papers onto the table and just goes, huh. And then the credits roll to silence.
Silence, man.
And you get like a cast call where they do freeze
Which
frames.
Dan Curtis is so fucking thrilled about in that interview. He's just like, "Oh, I'm so glad I did that. People went crazy. They were on their feet, cheering and screaming."
When they get to end Barry Atwater as Janice Scorsese, they fucking lost their shit. Oh,
I love it. I love how proud he is of this.
And
it was just fun, is what it was.
And
we used to make fun movies.
This is where Tim Lucas lost his mind. He's given good. I mean, it's all good background stuff, and he
Yeah.
has good opinions.
Yeah.
Right around the time that Carl goes to kill, or is in the Skorzeny house and kills him, he starts going. He goes, "I find this interesting." He goes, "Here, there are various things here where they never. I mean, we see, Skorzeny's blood bank. We see the woman he's held captive, and he certainly does react to the cross." He goes, the close-ups of the fangs are really all you're getting that suggests he's an actual vampire. He goes, it's suggested that there's a possibility he wasn't really a vampire. They leave this open. They leave this open-ended.
What movie did he watch?
And then he goes, and then right here at the end with where he's got the book, and he goes, that laugh right there as he tosses the papers down. It's almost is that the laugh of someone who's gotten something over on us?
What movie did he watch?
I know.
This guy, you're right. He did fully lose his mind.
He's totally.
Oh, that is such a film scholar just looking to do something, digging for a new take. Oh, I hate that. And I'm sitting
there going, I'm sorry, Tim. The laugh at the end is the laugh of a man. That is a sardonic laugh. A man who's been beat down.
Who knows nobody's ever going to read what he just wrote. Yes, that's
completely pointless.
That's the only way to read what happened.
He did. I know. And I just sat there going,
now I'm mad.
I'm like, Tim, let's have a lunch where I tell you how wrong you are.
You are out of your goddamn
I'll even buy you a sandwich at Subway. It's on me.
Kidding
Sit
me.
down, get the foot long. And we will talk about how wrong.
That's right. I'll splurge on the foot long.
I'll splurge on the foot long.
Good Lord. Okay, yeah.
John,
that man's insane.
John, is the Night Stalker good?
The Night Stalker is amazing. Good doesn't even
Should
begin.
Should people watch this one?
They if they haven't seen it, they need to run and watch this right now because this is a classic.
I fucking love it.
It's so
and as I said,
just so good. It's just so fun and
my nitpick is only about Janos Skorzeny because he is an intelligent character, because we even hear about how he's been changing identities, moving across countries. He's created, backstories of being a doctor. These are all things where he would interact with people. He would talk to them. He has backstories. Once he gets to Las Vegas, he is portrayed very well by Barry Atwater as merely a ferocious, hissing, super powerful dude. And he's basically a creature of the night, which I love a vampire that's both. I love a vampire when you push him, he's going to go, fuck you, here are my fangs, and I'm throwing you through a window.
We pretty much only see him when he is pushed. Is that not correct?
It's true, but right there at the end,
because he's very. I mean, it's the thing about him, very calmly taking that blood, but then he's caught and he's like, ah,
yes, yeah,
like a trapped animal.
And I'm just thinking, right there in that house, he has all the power over this guy who's clearly an investigative something. He may not know he's a reporter or whatever, but he could just sit there and go, you think you're smart, right? You found me. I just want an intelligent vampire. I love when Christopher Lee talks as Dracula.
Yeah.
Dialogue for the immortal. An immortal should not just be a creature that goes... There's a reason why Stephen King created the character that James Mason plays in Salem's Lot, and his reason was that immortal vampire is so old he cannot even interact with humans anymore because he looks like Nosferatu. He can't pass for a human.
I mean, we'll eventually get to Salem's Lot on here.
I can't wait.
One of my
favorites. That makes a certain amount of sense. But if you're a vampire that doesn't look too different, then fucking talk. That's a little nitpick. I like when
Brendan Jones speaks for himself, not for the opinions of the show.
Two intelligent people are antagonists and protagonists.
I love a supervillain vampire.
Yep. Just one scene of dialogue would have been great. But here's the thing. I love Night Stalker unreservedly.
So good.
Darren McGavin is a god to me, as I've said many times. He created this character that I would have watched and did watch go up against ridiculous looking androids and headless motorcycle dudes and shape changing Native American spirits.
I
all
can't
kinds
wait to
of
see
stuff
all
in that
of it
TV
in
show.
the beautiful restoration that Keenan Lorber
A
has done.
UFO that is only represented by a Klieg light, a bright light.
Yep.
I mean, it's cheap TV of the 70s, and I will watch every episode again and again and again
Absolutely.
until the day I die.
Because Kolchak is a great character. It almost doesn't matter what he's going up against.
The thing, I mean, I loved it about Mulder too, but Mulder, oddly, because he's an FBI agent, because he is a trained law enforcement officer, even though he had plenty of moments in that show, because Duchovny's great, of looking like I'm out of my depth and I don't know what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Generally speaking, he's so capable. I still love Kolchak more because he is the most unlikely of guys to save us all from supernatural evil. And it always falls to this guy who's not necessarily heroic, who's not necessarily physically capable. And yet he's got a camera and he's got his wits and he goes out and he fucking destroys zombies and werewolves. And I fucking love him.
So good, man.
Sorry, this has been my Kolchak love hour.
I mean, look, I love me some Kolchak too. I certainly grew up with Mulder more so, but that's a generational thing. So Fox Mulder's always been my guy.
I love Scully and Mulder all day long.
They're great, yeah. Well, Brendan, next week on the show, we are in the 70s.
Just as good.
And
just as good.
We are gonna be very 70s next week when things get a little funky as we meet Blackula.
Holy mother of
something. He's the baddest vampire that's ever hit the silver screen.
He really is. And he's also played by the great William Marshall.
Absolutely love him.
It is a weird combo, this movie, in my memory, because it is blaxploitation cinema. Mm-hmm. But you do have an actor who's literally trying to do it straight.
Oh, yeah,
Even though he's in this ridiculous costume. And he's not, of course, referred to as Blackula in the movie. I just hit myself with a rubber band.
I think it would be. I saw that. Yeah. It would lose something. It was like, no, Count Blackula.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But
we are covering both Blackula movies, and yes, folks, don't worry, Blackenstein will also be covered on here.
Yes.
So
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Black, we are not covering.
No.
I know you think I made that up. It's real.
No, I know it is. We never did get to the Dr. Jekyll movies. We've talked about doing its own miniseries at some point, just about the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde movies, because I
think if you watch literally the same basic story back to back to back to back, it would drive us insane.
We might go insane if we do that. That's why I say we might do that. We have other.
We're going to be running into lots of remakes of Dracula and Frankenstein in this season, back to back, where it's like, oh, good, another take on Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Yeah.
That's why I prefer the ones where they're like, let's see what the monster's up to now, or let's do something else with them.
The back-to-back of Frankenstein, the True Story, and Dan Curtis's Frankenstein. That one's gonna sting.
I don't think we have Dracula and Count Dracula back-to-back, do we? We don't have Louis Jourdan and Jack Palance back-to-back?
No, we do not. We do not.
Okay.
There's a few movies between those, actually.
But, folks, Blackula is fun. We
also have a movie between the two Blackulas, unlike the Yorgos, so we're not doing both Blackulas in a row.
There you go. But I tentatively recommend you guys watch it, especially
I remember
if you just
liking
love
it.
this
It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I remember having a fondness for it.
It's goofy trash.
Yeah.
It's goofy trash.
And we are here for goofy trash.
We are indeed all day long.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is going to wrap up this episode of Campbell and Jones Meet the Monsters. I'm John Campbell.
I'm Brendan Jones.
And remember, there are such things as monsters.
Bum 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 bum.